In a desolate, cratered landscape, Rizel reflects on his latest failure. He had hoped to forge a super heavyweight sword with the density of a neutron star, but it was unsuccessful. He grimly concludes that with his current level of magic, he will never be able to compete against the ultimate life forms. He sighs, briefly thinking of past companions who went their separate ways for their own urgent reasons. Deciding he has been adventuring alone for too long, he resolves to head towards a well-populated city and activates his flight magic. Just as he begins to ascend, a dark energy erupts violently from the ground beneath him. The eruption tears a jagged fissure in the earth. He stares down, bewildered, questioning what he is seeing. A quick check confirms his flight magic is not malfunctioning. The phenomenon is a distortion in space itself. His expression tightens as he recognizes the grave danger. If that distortion begins to pull things into it, the consequences would be catastrophic. Before he can formulate a plan, a pale hand shoots out from the inky blackness of the rift. The hand clamps firmly around his neck. Caught completely by surprise, his eyes widen in shock at the sudden, impossible assault. From within the dark portal, a woman with long, light hair and ornate robes emerges, her form dissolving the darkness. As the hand releases him, she places her own hand over her heart and introduces herself with a gentle smile as Risha, the summoning goddess. He remains frozen, the title goddess echoing in his mind. He can only stare in disbelief as she stands serenely before him, seemingly unbothered by the magical energies swirling around them. Attempting to regain his composure, he clears his throat and asks what she was trying to say. Risha apologizes for her abrupt arrival and clarifies her statement. She is the equivalent of what one would call a goddess, but from a different world. She explains that wherever she goes, she is guided to appear in the vicinity of that world's strongest person. Her gaze meets his, and she asks him directly if he is the one. Internally, he scoffs, wondering if she is merely role-playing some kind of fairy tale. As if hearing his thoughts, she calmly insists that this is not a fairy tale. Rizel is stunned, realizing she must have slipped through his anti-magic barrier and read his mind. Resigned, he introduces himself as Rizel, the strongest in this world, at least among humans. A strategic thought crosses his mind. If he has her power with him, he might just be able to subjugate the superior life forms. He agrees to her request, prompting an ecstatic response from Risha, who thanks him repeatedly. When he asks for his task, she explains that he must follow the king's order and defeat the demon lord, a concept that seems foreign to him. With the terms set, Risha gestures toward the swirling darkness and asks if he is ready. Before he can fully process the mission, Risha activates a glowing sphere. The space before him shatters like glass, and a powerful force begins to pull him into the void. He cries out in alarm as his body is irresistibly drawn forward. He finds himself hurtling through a disorienting, fractured dimension. Realizing resistance is futile, he closes his eyes and accepts his fate, concluding that progress requires risk. The chaotic journey ends as abruptly as it began. He opens his eyes to find himself standing in a vast, vaulted throne room, with Risha calmly at his side. A man wearing a crown steps forward, bidding them a warm welcome. As Rizel observes his new surroundings, the man formally introduces himself as the king of the country and the one responsible for summoning all of them. Standing near the king are several other figures, a young boy, a girl with twin tails, and a robed individual. Rizel's gaze sweeps over the three other individuals standing nearby. He realizes with certainty that he was not the only one summoned to this place. Each of them is distinct. A young man with glasses wearing a dark cloak, a powerfully built bald man with his arms crossed, and a man in a modern camouflage uniform. His observation is confirmed by a court official, who asks if these four are all of the ones summoned this time. Another official affirms that is correct. Rizel listens, his initial assessment now verified. The official silently appraises the other three summoned individuals, thinking to himself that for supposed heroes, their magical power seems rather weak. He decides to first explain the world to them before checking their statuses. He begins by outlining the primary inhabitants, humans, demons, and the far less numerous demi-humans. Rizel considers this, noting that it isn't much different from his own world. The official, however, narrows his focus, stating that the true problem lies with the demons. He elaborates that humans and demons have been at war for a long time, but recently the demons' influence has grown at an alarming rate. If it continues, all will fall under their control. It was for this reason, he explains, that they were called forth. He then identifies each of them. Frodo, a civil servant, Leol, an adventurer, Banza, a mercenary, and finally, Rizel, whose background is unknown. The official formally requests their strength to defeat the demons, promising a lifetime of rewards should they succeed. Leol, the adventurer, grins, finding the deal attractive and a good chance to test his strength. Frodo agrees as well. Rizel, however, remains silent, recalling a time when he was thanked for defeating demons back in his own world. To begin, the official announces they will test the hero's current combat capabilities. He presents a crystal ball, an appraiser that combines raw magic power and control into a numerical value. Leol steps forward immediately, declaring that since he was the first one there, he'll go first. He places his hand on the orb, and it erupts in a blinding flash of light. From his throne, The king watches in awe alongside the summoning goddess. He bellows in excitement, announcing a combat power of 4,097, declaring it to be amazing. Leo flexes, immensely pleased with himself. As he steps back, Frodo moves to take his turn. Rizel, however, watches the scene with a look of confusion, wondering to himself if those numbers are really supposed to be that good. Before his turn came, he listened as the results for the other heroes were declared. The appraiser announced a combat power of 3,664 for one, and an even more impressive 3,776 for another. The man in camouflage, Banza, seemed satisfied with his result, while the bespectacled Frodo accepted his with a quiet smile, remarking that it was about what he expected. With the others assessed, the appraiser gestured forward, calling for the last person. Rizel acknowledged with a simple "got it," and prepared to step up. The king watched him with a stern, unreadable expression. A nagging thought surfaced in Rizel's mind. The unidentifiable status from before still bothered him. He approached the crystal, but the room fell silent as the device failed to react. The appraiser, initially awestruck by the hero's power, now looked flustered, stammering that it didn't seem to be working. Rizel's composure began to crack, a bead of sweat on his temple as he asked what was wrong, offering a hurried apology. From across the hall, the other summoned individuals watched the awkward scene unfold. In a bid to force a result, he pressed his gloved hand firmly against the crystal's smooth surface. The appraiser stared, his anxiety palpable as he waited for any sign of a reading. The silence was finally broken by the appraiser's trembling voice announcing the combat power, 0. The king erupted in disbelief, demanding to know if the crystal was broken. The appraiser confirmed it was not. Rizel, now sweating profusely, insisted that the machine must be malfunctioning. The king's disbelief instantly curdled into explosive rage. He pointed a finger at Rizel, roaring for him to get out of the castle, declaring that he would never recognize a 0 as a hero. Stunned by the sudden hostility, Rizel pleaded for him to wait, desperately insisting that the reading was an error and that he possessed magical abilities. To demonstrate his abilities, Rizel presents a piece of coal and performs spell. He explains that atom reconstruction, a magic requiring a minimum of 7,000 combat power, is perfect for showing off. Before the court's eyes, the coal shatters and reforms into a massive, flawless diamond. He holds it out to a stunned official, asking if this proves he can use magic. The king, however, looks on with a scowl, demanding to know the purpose of this trick. His question is answered with fury. The king lunges forward, grabbing Rizel by his uniform and roaring that a spell to turn coal into diamond doesn't exist in this world. A bewildered Rizel tries to explain that it's quite common in his own world, but the king cuts him off, shouting for him to be quiet and ordering the useless charlatan out of his castle at once. The other summoned heroes join in the scorn. Leol calls it pathetic, Frodo remarks on his sad life, and Banza expresses disbelief that he would try to lie with such a fake. Desperate, Rizel turns his gaze to the goddess Risha, wondering if anyone present understands the spell. The king bellows for the guards, calling him a scammer. Risha simply watches, her face an unreadable mask. At the king's command, 2 armored guards seize him, forcing him to his knees with their crossed polearms. The king's final judgment echoes through the hall. Rizel is to take the gem as a farewell gift and be exiled, never to appear before him again. He is cast out into the city streets. On his hands and knees in a cobblestone square, the weight of his banishment settles upon him. A passing child points, asking her mother what he is doing, but Rizel can only stare blankly at the ground. He finds his way to a public fountain and slumps onto its edge, burying his head in his hands. He wonders what he is supposed to do now. The mother from before notices her child still staring and pulls her away, telling her not to look. As he sits in despair, the king's furious command to get out rings in his memory. He can't believe it. They betrayed him, just like in the games he used to play. He shakes himself from his stupor, resolving to change his pace. He decides that for now, he needs to think about his next steps. There is something he needs to confirm. With newfound purpose, he stands and walks down the street. His search leads him to a weapons and tools workshop that also purchases goods. He enters and presents the large diamond to the elderly shopkeeper. The old man inspects it closely, marveling at the beautiful gem and asking if he can buy it. Rizel, worried about being called a scammer again, notes that it's artificially made. The shopkeeper's friendly demeanor vanishes, replaced by a stern glare as he asks if Rizel is messing with him. He is met not with accusation, but with confusion. The shopkeeper says he's never heard of an artificial diamond, suggesting it could be used as an abrasive. The statement hits Rizel with the force of a revelation. The people in this world haven't created artificial diamonds yet. The shopkeeper then exclaims that if he sells this at a proper jewel shop, he'll have enough money to live freely for 10 whole years. He urgently needed to secure some funds, all while keeping the true origin of his gems a secret. Turning to a local innkeeper, he inquired about the cost of lodging for the night. The old man estimated it would be around 10,000 pi. The price seemed steep, but Rizel saw an opportunity. He made a counteroffer, proposing to sell an item in his possession for 70,000 pi. The innkeeper was utterly flabbergasted by the amount, stammering in disbelief and questioning if Rizel was some kind of new charity business, refusing to believe the offer was serious. He calmly explained his need for immediate funds, assuring the man of the diamond's value. Rizel proposed a simple solution, a deposit of 70,000 pi. The innkeeper, though still looking overwhelmed by the sum, reluctantly agreed to the arrangement. With the terms settled, the two shook hands, finalizing their deal. As he departed from the shop, the innkeeper waved cheerfully, thanking him for his business and inviting him to return. Clutching a heavy pouch of coins, he reflected on the effort it took. It had been a process, but he now had the funds he desperately needed. He stood overlooking the town as the light faded, contemplating his situation. It was clear that alchemy in this world was not particularly advanced, and the value of currency was vastly different from what he knew. A long, difficult path lay before him. In the downtown district, at Marie's Inn, Rizel lies in bed, exhausted. He sighs, reflecting on the unbelievable situation he has found himself in. He begins to reassess everything. He had thought the goddess was from another world, and that his arrival was due to a space transfer magic called summoning. However, the innkeeper's earlier comments gave him pause. The man had never heard of using gems to make merchandise, stating that this world's magical development was completely different. This new information forces him to question if this is truly another world. Getting out of bed, he initiates a quantum motion analysis magic. The results are undeniable. There are differences in the laws of physics and even materials he has never seen before. The realization strikes him. There is no other explanation. He lies back down, processing the implications. If what has happened so far wasn't just some game by the self-proclaimed goddess, then it is safe to assume that the king exiling him was also an unforeseen event outside of her control. He then considers his purpose. Should he act as the hero meant to save the world? Would defeating a demon lord satisfy the goddess? The very concept is foreign to him, as his world had no such thing. He visualizes a stereotypical demon, narcissistic, thuggish, and skilled at magic, and reasons that the demons of this world must be intelligent enough to form a monarchy. He acknowledges his lack of information regarding the humans' war efforts since his exile, and wonders if the demons are truly evil. With newfound resolve, he sits up straight. He has made a decision. He will go meet the demon lord. Having made his decision, he wonders if his magic works the same way here. Sitting cross-legged, he initiates his storage magic, and a glowing rectangular portal materializes in the air before him. From it, he summons a device, a recon satellite. Equipped with a printer, it is designed to fly into the sky and survey the ground, creating a map from the resulting images. The satellite hovers briefly before flying out the open window into the night. Relieved that his tools work without issue, he gives it a command. Create a map of the path to the demon lord's castle. Trusting the device, he lies down and nap until its work is done. He wakes to find it is morning. He accidentally slept through the night. On a nearby table, a long, detailed map has finished printing. As he moves to collect the map and place it in storage, his eyes widen. He senses a presence. He must investigate. He immediately pinpointed the source of the presence he'd sensed. 3 figures crouched silently within his room. Their use of high-level detection magic was unmistakable. There was no doubt in his mind they were assassins. Stepping out of the inn, he walked with purpose as the assassins repositioned themselves on a nearby rooftop to observe him. One confirmed his identity to the others, noting that he was the same summoned hero they had seen being escorted by guards just yesterday. As he continued down a narrow alley, the weight of his situation settled in. He had clearly made an enemy of the king. From their vantage point, the assassins confirmed that everyone was in position, one asking if the others remembered the plan. He correctly deduced that the assassins had been sent by the king. Realizing they were communicating via voice transmission magic, he decided to attempt an interception. A faint smile touched his lips as he understood the opportunity this presented. These were indeed the assassins sent to eliminate him, and he could turn the tables. From a rooftop, the leader confirmed that there was no one else in the vicinity of their target. With the area secured, the order was given: execute the plan. A subordinate acknowledged, stating their intent to bring back the target's head as proof of the kill. In response, one of the assassins raised a blowgun to their lips and fired a single, swift dart. The projectile struck him squarely in the neck. He instantly identified it as a poison designed to induce unconsciousness in seconds, believing he could counteract it with continuous protection magic. But his body betrayed him, and he crumpled to the ground. The assassins descended and surrounded his motionless form, one declaring the assassination a success as they prepared to sever his head for evidence. Surrounded by assassins, Rizel moves with blinding speed, unleashing a crackling wave of lightning magic that arcs towards his attackers. The electric energy surges through the assassins, their bodies seizing up violently from the overwhelming shock. He stands over their twitching, incapacitated forms, a soft light glowing in his palm as he prepares a spell to ensure they remain unconscious for a while. With the immediate threat neutralized, he accesses his inventory and retrieves a peculiar item, a multifunctional stem cell. He recalls his past failures in creating clones with combat abilities, which led him to store this particular asset. A new idea forms. While it might not copy his abilities, it can certainly be used to replicate his corpse. The process is a success. A perfect, unclothed duplicate of himself now stands before him. Rizel instructs his other, already clothed clones to dress the new creation and inflict a blow dart wound to make the scene convincing. He assures them that he has already cast area recovery magic on the assassins, so they will eventually recover from his initial attack. His preparations complete, he turns away from the scene. With the unwanted business handled, he sets his sights on a new goal, the residence of the Demon Lord. Moments later, the assassins begin to stir, groaning as they regain consciousness. Their leader looks around in confusion, wondering what happened. Then, his eyes fall upon the still form of their target lying on the ground. One of the assassins checks the body and confirms the worst. He's dead. Frustrated by the time they've wasted, one of the assassins decapitates the body with a swift, angry slash. The leader gives the order to retrieve the head as proof and depart. They vanish into the shadows, leaving the headless decoy lying in a pool of light in the otherwise dark alley. Far away, silhouetted against the full moon, a dark castle looms atop a misty mountain peak, the Demon Lord's domain. Under the light of a full moon, Rizel arrives before a formidable fortress, its dark towers piercing the night sky. He recognizes it at once, the Demon Lord's castle. As he walks towards the main gate, two armored guards stationed there suddenly take notice, their voices ringing out with a sharp command to halt. His path is blocked as the guards cross their spears before him, demanding to know what business a human has at their gates. Unfazed, Rizel calmly states his purpose. He wishes to speak with the Demon Lord and asks if they might guide him. The guards are momentarily speechless at the audacity of his request. Their disbelief quickly turns to fury, one of them questioning if he truly thinks a human can see the Demon Lord simply by asking. They accuse him of toying with them, their voices filled with contempt. Before the two stunned demon guards, Rizel holds up his hands placatingly. He sincerely apologizes for the sudden visit, offering to make a formal appointment. The guards can only stare, utterly bewildered by his polite demeanor. His outward calm, however, masks his internal thoughts. He realizes it's absurd to think they would ever let a human, let alone a summoned hero, simply make an appointment to meet the Demon Lord. The Horn Guard, still wary, points a spear and questions Rizel's claim of being a hero, asking if he was exiled. Rizel confirms it, explaining that while he is a summoned hero, he was indeed cast out by the king. He continues his explanation, revealing that he was almost assassinated by the king's agents that very morning. He posits that, given the circumstances, it shouldn't be strange for him to now side with the Demon Lord. The guard recoils in shock at the mention of assassins, then his expression hardens. He declares they won't fall for the same trap again, suggesting a past hero attempted a similar deception. Considering the guard's distrust, Rizel realizes a direct approach is failing. He thinks to himself that while brainwashing is an option, it's too troublesome. He changes tactics, pointing towards a distant castle tower. He announces to the guards that he sees a pathetic excuse for a teleportation-obstructing barrier set up at its peak. His dismissive comment strikes a nerve. The winged guard gasps, shocked and offended that Rizel would call their defenses pathetic. The provocation works perfectly. The Horned Guard erupts in fury, roaring about how dare he insult the Demon Lord's carefully constructed, omnipotent, all-purpose barrier. Unfazed, Rizel simply smiles. Thanks, he says, having gotten the confirmation he needed. So it's there. Realizing he's been tricked, the Horned Guard stammers for a moment before trying to regain his composure. He scoffs dismissively, challenging Rizel to try and get past the teleportation obstruction if he thinks he can. With a confident smile and a thumbs up, Rizel replies, Okay. As a complex magical circle illuminates the ground beneath his feet, he states that he doesn't need particularly strong teleportation magic for a barrier of that level. He bids them a casual see ya as his body begins to dissolve into particles of light. The two guards can only watch, their faces a mask of pure shock and disbelief, realizing the intruder is for real. He rematerializes within a grand chamber, his form coalescing from a cascade of shimmering particles and rings of light. Far behind him, the two demon guards stare at the now empty gateway, one of them stammering in confusion, wondering what they had just witnessed. The particles of his teleportation spell streak across the night sky, converging on a high tower of the Demon Lord's castle, silhouetted against the full moon. Inside the tower, the last vestiges of light from his arrival dissipate around him. He stands fully formed, his gaze steady and determined. His boots touch down silently on the polished floor. He has arrived exactly where he intended, the Demon Lord's personal chamber. Standing in the center of the lavish room, his presence is immediately noticed. A hesitant voice calls out, questioning who he is. The question comes from a young woman with prominent horns seated on a throne, the Demon Lord herself. Beside her, a handmaiden recoils in terror. The Demon Lord's initial surprise hardens as she demands to know his identity. Within the throne room, the Demon Lord is startled by the sudden appearance of an intruder, demanding to know who he is. The man, Rizel, calmly assesses her, noting to himself that her magic power is 100 times greater than that of the guards at the gate, a decent amount of strength. The Demon Lord remains flustered, questioning how a human could possibly be there and why her teleportation barrier failed to stop him. In her confusion, she asks if he is the Demon Lord. He offers a polite apology for passing through her barrier without asking. She confirms that she is, in fact, the Demon Lord, but remains bewildered, asking again who he is and why he has come. He explains that he would have felt bad if he had damaged something she put effort into, so he asks for her forgiveness that it wasn't destroyed. The Demon Lord is stunned that he passed through her powerful defenses completely unharmed. As he calmly adjusts his glove, she watches him with intense suspicion, trying to discern his identity and purpose. He finally introduces himself as Rizel. He clarifies that he was originally summoned to this world as a hero, but was exiled due to certain circumstances. Therefore, he explains, he is currently aligned with neither the human nor the demon side. His reason for coming to her is simple, to ask about this world. To be certain, he asks for one more confirmation that she is the demon lord. This question enrages her. Her face contorts with fury as she screams at him not to mess with her, finding the notion of a summoned hero seeking her for answers to be an utter mockery. As a large, complex magic circle materializes in the air, he realizes with mild regret that he chose the wrong method to approach her. She unleashes her power in a blinding flash of energy, shouting that he is impudent. The blast surges toward him, yet he stops it effortlessly with a single outstretched finger, causing the attack to shatter. He calmly thinks to himself that this is troublesome, as he has no proof to show that he was fired from his position as the hero. With the attack nullified, the demon lord smirks, acknowledging that he is quite competent. As Rizel stands impassively, she wonders to herself what she should do now. A tall, horned warrior leaps to defend her queen, positioning her spear between the throne and the intruder as dust and debris rain down from the ceiling. She asks if Her Majesty is all right. Beside her, another guard stares in disbelief, questioning just who this man could be. Rizel, meanwhile, remains perfectly still, his hands casually in his pockets, his expression unreadable. The demon lord cries out a warning for them to be careful, explaining that her own attacks had no effect on the man. The horned warrior commands her subordinate not to panic, insisting that their sole duty is to eliminate the intruder, regardless of the difficulty. The guard can scarcely believe that even His Majesty's power was useless. Rizel calmly assesses the situation, noting that the guard's combat ability is roughly 80% of the warrior's. He realizes that killing these two would be tantamount to a declaration of war, concluding it would be better to demonstrate that he poses no threat. Confronted by the demon lord's guards, Rizel raises a hand, a complex magical glyph shimmering into existence before him. He recognizes that his actions might be perceived as a threat, but resolves that he must force them to see peaceful discussion as the superior option. In a flash of light, the spell strikes. The two guards, Jack and Serena, are caught completely off guard, their forms momentarily silhouetted against the blast. From her throne, the demon lord cries out their names in alarm. A ring of pure energy passes through the guards. Serena stares, stunned, as Jack's body is enveloped by the strange, sparkling magic, his expression frozen in shock. He touches his neck, bewildered, certain he had just been struck down. The demon lord is equally shocked, questioning how they could have revived. Rizel calmly clarifies that was never the case, as he had no intention of killing them in the first place. He continues with a dismissive air, telling them they are overreacting. He questions why Jack would think he'd die simply from having his head fly off, leaving both guards speechless with terror and confusion. Her composure finally breaks. The demon lord points an accusing finger, shouting that he is the strange one. She insists there has never been any precedent for a spell that allows someone to survive decapitation. Serena attempts to defend her ruler's logic, declaring it ridiculous because the demon lord is the strongest. Rizel cuts her off, stating her understanding has been dulled by politics. He asserts that it is obvious he operates beyond their common sense, and they should stop applying their limited knowledge to his actions. The confrontation shifts. Now seated before her, Rizel looks up as the demon lord places her high-heeled shoe on the table between them. He calmly brings the conversation back to its purpose, reminding her that she said he was there to gather information. She leans forward with a confident, almost predatory smile, and agrees. She tells him to inquire about anything he wishes. He returns the smile, expressing his satisfaction that she is finally willing to answer his questions. The demon lord laughs cheerfully, but her guards remain anxious. Serena voices their concern, reminding her that they still don't know if this man is an enemy. Unconcerned, the demon lord replies that if it comes to that, she supposes she would just have to give up. She addressed her concerned guards, explaining her rationale. She admitted to being the one who attacked first and argued that continuing to receive damage was pointless. It would be far better, she reasoned, to bet on an option that leaves them with some hope. Furthermore, she expressed a strong feeling that this man would become an ally, and that they should simply talk things out. Turning her attention to Rizel, she offered a reassuring smile. He, in turn, felt a bead of sweat as he reflected on how rough the situation had become, though it now seemed to be settling down. The demon lord confirmed his thoughts, telling him there was no need for concern and that his companions should wait outside. Her guards exchanged a look of uncertainty. Jack let out a thoughtful sound, still processing the command, while Serena watched him with a worried glance. Despite their reservations, they turned to Rizel and bowed in deference. Serena spoke for them both, affirming that his wish was their command. With their obedience pledged, the two guards departed, leaving Rizel alone with the demon lord. The demon lord settles onto her throne with a confident smile, crossing her legs as she looks down at Rizel. She invites him to state his questions or requests, and he offers his thanks. He begins by asking if the rumors are true, that the human race is on the verge of being dominated by the rapidly expanding demon race. The demon lord dismisses this immediately, stating that everything he has heard is completely wrong. Confused, he asks what she means. She explains that, far from growing in power, the demons have actually been growing weaker for hundreds of years. She asserts they have never considered subjugating humans, and, in fact, it is the humans who are forcing unfavorable conditions upon them. To prove her point, she produces a rolled-up scroll, and he takes the offered document. He unrolls the scroll slightly, immediately sensing the king's magic emanating from it. He realizes with a start that this must be the original contract forged between humans and demons. He looks up from the document, his expression questioning. With a simple, firm yes, the demon lord confirms his unspoken thought. He reads a specific clause aloud in his mind, his eyes widening in shock. The text stipulates that any human committing a crime within demon borders will be judged by human laws, and the demons will bear no responsibility for any harm that befalls humans. He recoils, wondering aloud how such an unreasonable contract could possibly have been made. In response to his shock, the demon lord begins to explain the history. Generations ago, the previous demon lord was killed by the hero. Since the title of demon lord has always belonged to the strongest demon, that single death proved that no one among them was capable of defeating the hero. She continues, her expression grim, revealing the dire consequence of that defeat. If the demons were to refuse these conditions, the hero would simply take her throne and kill her. The revelation settles heavily upon him. His hand tightens on the armrest of his chair as he processes the truth of their situation, and he murmurs his understanding. His mind races with the implications. If the goddess already had such a powerful hero at her disposal, why did she summon them? He wonders if she simply summons a new one every time a hero dies, but the question hangs in his mind, unanswered. He turns back to the demon lord, seated on her throne, and poses a question. Is the hero who forced the contract upon them still alive? The demon lord looks up, seemingly taken aback by the inquiry. She confirms that the hero is indeed alive. This only deepens Rizel's confusion. Holding the contract, he asks why. Then, he was summoned at all, reminding her that he was exiled. The demon lord explains that if it weren't for that very hero, she would have destroyed the contract long ago. Leaning closer with a sharp smile, she tells him that luck must be on his side, as he barely escaped death. The word hangs in the air, and Rizel can only echo it in disbelief. Death. The demon lord's voice delivers the devastating truth as the realization crashes down upon him. He was not summoned to be a hero. He was summoned to be a sacrifice. Under the full moon, Rizel reels from the demon lord's words. He repeats the term sacrifices in disbelief, his expression shifting to one of urgent concern. He implores her to explain in more detail, while she regards him with a silent, steady gaze. She begins her tale, explaining that the events in question started about 600 years ago, coinciding with the very first summoning of a hero. Her story reveals that this first hero was nowhere near as strong as legends might suggest. He was completely outmatched, facing the combined might of the four heavenly kings, a group that included the parents of the warrior Serena. The defeat deeply discouraged the human leadership, who then ordered the goddess to summon an even stronger hero. However, all the heroes that followed were much the same. Rizel processes this, confirming that the parents she mentioned were two of the heavenly kings. A thought then strikes him. He realizes that the advanced magic tool he possesses was likely created by someone from his own world. The demon lord affirms his suspicion. He then asks if the goddess was also responsible for creating that tool. With a simple, direct confirmation, the demon lord affirms that she was. She continues, revealing the humans' horrific strategy, the creation of a combined hero. They would summon heroes, force them to fight and grow stronger against monsters and demons, and once they neared their limits, they would be absorbed by this combined hero. This cycle of summoning and absorption was repeated, creating a champion far stronger than the demon lord of that era, and allowing humanity to impose unfavorable terms upon the demons. As this process was repeated over the centuries, the combined hero grew league stronger. The demon lord concludes her explanation by quoting the human rationale. They must always create a stronger hero, for they never know when a stronger demon lord might appear. Rizel reflects on this, finding the cold logic disturbingly easy to comprehend. He processes the full weight of her story. A grim understanding settles in his eyes. If what she says is true, then his true enemies are the goddess and the hero. This realization is particularly bitter, as he came to this world to ask that very goddess for a favor. His thoughts darken further. There can be no favors from her, not if her ultimate goal is to make her helper, him, into another sacrifice for her champion. The image of the goddess Risha, looking down with a smug expression, solidifies his resolve. He turns back to the demon lord, his decision made. He asks for her permission to test the story she has told him, stating his intent to gather evidence via his satellite analysis. A glowing, grid-like interface materializes over his gloved hand. The demon lord agrees, though she watches with a mix of surprise and curiosity, wondering what kind of detection magic he is about to use. His analysis concludes, displaying a complex map of the palace on a translucent screen. He observes the data points representing the souls of past heroes, realizing with grim certainty that they no longer even resemble human souls. He confirms to the Demon Lord that he found traces of both the magical tool and the combined hero within the palace, concluding that her story appears to be true. The Demon Lord reels back in astonishment, demanding to know how in the world he was able to scout the palace. He calmly explains that it's a simple matter, provided one has the proper tools for analysis. She questions whether he even needed her help to begin with, marveling at the high-level capabilities he possesses. Internally, she despairs, wishing he had some kind of limitation. He concedes her point, admitting that if it weren't for her, he never would have thought to search the palace for the combined hero or anything related to it. Flustered, she dismisses his gratitude, but he sincerely thanks her for the intelligence she provided. He explains that without it, he would have remained ignorant of his own fate as a future sacrifice. His mind races, formulating a new strategy. He realizes he must corner the goddess, leaving her no choice but to send him back to his own world. The thought of taking the combined hero hostage crosses his mind, but he quickly discards it, knowing it would not benefit the Demon Lord who had helped him. He is left pondering the most effective way to cause trouble for a deity. Suddenly, an idea dawns on him. He turns sharply toward the Demon Lord, whose eyes widen in surprise at his sudden intensity. "I know," he declares, before posing a question directly to her. He looks her straight in the eye and makes a startling proposal, an offer to defeat the combined hero with her own hands. Her expression hardens as she explains her deep-seated motivation. The combined hero, she reveals, was the origin of the oppressive contracts forced upon her people and the one responsible for murdering her ancestors. She declares that defeating him is her life's ambition, a duty she carries not only as the current Demon Lord, but also as a descendant of all those who came before her. With a confident smile, Rizel makes his proposal to the Demon Lord. He offers to personally guide her, promising to grant her enough power to surpass the combined hero. The Demon Lord glares, but his words have clearly captured her attention. She questions his motives, asking why he is willing to go to such lengths for her. He explains calmly that his ultimate goal is to return to his own world, and to achieve that, he must devise a way to corner the goddess into negotiations. The Demon Lord seems to understand his reasoning, but then wonders how she could possibly become as strong as the hero. Rizel then reveals a startling fact. The hero she faces currently possesses only about 1/5 of his own strength, a level he insists she can reach through sheer effort. This revelation stuns her. She protests that even a fraction of his power is an immense hurdle, questioning if he truly is the strongest of his race. He brushes off her concerns, assuring her that everything will work out if she follows his instructions. He explains that once she identifies and compensates for her weaknesses, she will be able to envision a path to victory. After a moment of consideration, she steps forward and formally accepts his offer. Seeing that she has made her choice, Rizel extends his hand. They shake, sealing their pact. He warns her to prepare for a Spartan training regimen, which immediately causes her to plead for moderation. With the agreement settled, she asks if there is a suitable place for this training. Her expression shifts to one of dread as the word Sparta echoes in her mind. He considers for a moment, then states his intention to conduct a simulation battle to assess her current abilities. He mentions that there is a location perfect for this, just a few kilometers away. They turn their attention to what appears to be a map. The Demon Lord points to a specific spot, identifying it as their destination. Rizel confirms he will handle the arrangements. Without warning, he sweeps her up into his arms, telling her to hold on tight. Startled, she questions the sudden closeness and protests that she isn't ready for whatever is about to happen. Her protests are lost to the wind as they launch into the night sky, a streak of brilliant light soaring towards a distant castle tower silhouetted against the full moon. He brings their flight to a sudden halt, arriving at a vast, desolate coliseum. The ancient stone structure, with its tiered seating and central arena, stands alone in a rocky landscape. Below, the Demon Lord looks up, her hair still settling from the abrupt stop. The landing leaves the Demon Lord doubled over and dizzy, muttering about the incredible magic power that brought them there in a flash. Rizel, sweating slightly, can only offer a sheepish apology for the rough ride. She quickly recovers, brushing off her momentary discomfort by claiming she's used to surprises by now. Her attention immediately shifts, and she points forward, demanding to know what magic item he is presenting. He reveals a floating, crystalline artifact, a tool for creating a phantom world. The Demon Lord looks on with confusion as he explains that to any outside observer, it will appear as though they are merely doing some healthy exercises. He elaborates that because of this illusion, she need not worry about anyone seeing her lose. The Demon Lord grimaces, annoyed by the item's unpleasant side effects, but grudgingly thanks him for the consideration. She rises to her feet, still a bit unsteady. Rizel observes her and remarks that if she has enough energy for chit-chat, then she must be ready to begin. Her confidence returns as she faces him across the arena floor. Rizel's expression becomes serious, and he announces that this time, he is going all out. They share a determined grin. Clasping his hands together with an air of finality, Rizel declares, "All right, let the simulation begin." Within a vast, empty coliseum, Rizel stands opposite the Demon Lord. He considers his strategy, deciding that simply deflecting her magic would be insufficient. It would be better, he concludes, to stop any spell she might cast entirely. Suddenly, the Demon Lord's eyes widen in alarm. She realizes with a jolt that he has completely vanished from her sight. She scans the arena, sensing his mana spreading throughout the air, a technique to mask his presence. She understands she won't be able to hit him with her magic unless she can focus on the precise moment he attacks. Just then, her senses flare, detecting a sudden movement. Whipping around, she shouts, "Over there!" and erects a magical barrier. Despite her quick reaction, a small white object slips past her defense and strikes her squarely on the head, causing her to cry out in pain and stumble forward. As she rubs a sore spot, she looks down to see a simple sports ball rolling to a stop. Rizel reappears, calmly explaining that the ball will vanish in 3 seconds and challenges her to try dodging it first. She thinks to herself that for a mere ball, it hurt a great deal. She looks up bewildered. Rizel's voice enters her mind, explaining via telepathy that the only magic he is using is body strengthening. The Demon Lord is stunned by his use of telepathy and his command to dodge the ball. Meanwhile, Rizel smirks to himself, thinking of her as that bug and looking forward to seeing her get serious. He maintains his confident grin. In response, her expression hardens into a fierce, competitive smile. She grits her teeth and vows that she will dodge it for sure this time. A moment later, she is struck again. Back in the arena, she successfully raises her hands and blocks the incoming object. Sweating from the effort, she realizes she is now, somehow, able to block it. Rizel commends her, then proposes the next test. He wants to gauge her magic's firepower and invites her to use whatever spell she wishes against him. She watches him, contemplating how to hit him with her magic. She wonders if she's finally getting used to his speed, or if perhaps his speed hadn't changed at all and it was her own perception that had sharpened. Taking a deep breath, she resolves to focus on accuracy over raw power. She then unleashes a formidable spell. Multiple large, glowing magical circles, a frame cannon, materialize around her, crackling with immense energy. Across the arena, Rizel observes the massive attack forming and calmly decides he should probably raise a simple barrier, just in case. He stands his ground as the Demon Lord's immense spell collides with his defense. With a desperate cry for her attack to land, she watches as the magical construct before him begins to fracture and splinter under the overwhelming force. The barrier shatters completely, resulting in a cataclysmic explosion of dark magical energy that fills the Colosseum. As the dust settles, the Demon Lord pants from the exertion, a triumphant look on her face as she asks for his assessment of her power. Across the arena, Rizel stares at the large, jagged hole in his otherwise intact barrier. He is stunned, forced to acknowledge that she had, against his expectations, succeeded in damaging his defense. Standing before a massive, ruined Colosseum under a full moon, the Demon Lord pants from exertion. Sweat beads on her face as she looks toward her opponent and asks with a mix of pride and exhaustion, "How was that?" He stands across the plaza, seemingly unfazed, though he internally admits to being exhausted. He reflects on the fact that she actually broke his barrier. He hadn't raised a weak one, and he muses that destroying a 3-dimensional barrier with 2-dimensional magic requires an incredible amount of mana. He finds it hard to believe she overcame the fundamental gap in magic simply by pouring in enough raw power. As he approaches, she flinches slightly. He gently touches her forehead, and she looks up, a triumphant grin spreading across her face as she exclaims, "I hit you." He smiles back, praising her effort as great. Internally, however, his mind is already calculating, wondering just how much firepower this Demon Lord could display if she were to use even stronger magic. His casual demeanor seems to fluster her. When he immediately suggests that the next test is to destroy a barrier hole, she throws up a hand, shouting for him to wait. She complains that he isn't taking this seriously and insists that she needs a moment to recompose herself. After their brief break, she asks what he means by a barrier. In response, he conjures a small, glowing orb of light in his palm. He explains that he will raise a barrier right now and instructs her to use her strongest magic to hit it. She hesitates, questioning if it's truly fine for her to use her full power, expressing concern that it might blow up the entire area. He reassures her not to worry, stating with absolute confidence that this particular barrier absorbs any attack. Hearing his claim, a bead of sweat trickles down her face. A sly, excited grin forms as she thinks to herself just how irregular this man is. With renewed determination, she accepts the challenge. She focuses her energy, her eyes wide with concentration. A massive, triangular magic sigil materializes in the air before her, glowing with immense power as she declares, "This is me at full strength." With that declaration, she unleashes a blindingly powerful beam of destructive energy. The blast surges across the plaza, aimed directly at the simple, translucent wall of magic Rizel has erected. The immense blast strikes the translucent wall and simply vanishes, absorbed without a trace. The barrier ripples for a moment before stabilizing. The Demon Lord's eyes are wide with shock, her mouth agape in disbelief as she stammers, "It really absorbed it." She watched as the last wisp of her power was drawn into the transparent barrier, which then dissolved into nothingness. Rizel stood on the tiled floor, completely untouched. He looked at her, his expression unimpressed, and asked if that was all she had. Flustered, she retorted with a sarcastic apology for not meeting his expectations. Rizel calmly confirmed her assessment, asking if she had a problem with it. She averted her gaze, cheeks puffed in frustration, wondering what he was getting at. He told her not to feel down, explaining that he had gained one clear insight from the test. He had instructed her to use everything, and she had done just that. He then apologized, realizing he hadn't even asked for her name. She wryly asked if he was the type to see nothing in his dreams, and he admitted it happened quite often. Accepting his apology, she conceded her own fault in the matter before formally introducing herself as the Demon Lord, Mayor Shah. She then stated her purpose. She needed his help to defeat the combined hero. Rizel thanks Mayor Shah for her sincerity, assuring her there's no need to feel down. He explains that while her magic powers are extremely strong, her techniques with magic formations need refinement. To simplify, he illustrates that magic power is a three-part formula: mana, the reservoir; magic output, the flow; and magic control, the pressure. The foundation of it all is the magic formation itself. Continuing his explanation, he gives an example. A human's mana is no match for a dragon's, but a dragon cannot use complex spells. By mastering magic control, a human can achieve the impossible and defeat one. Mayor Shah realizes with excitement that with her high magic output, she only needs to improve her control to grow significantly stronger. He then declares that he will have her learn three-dimensional magic first. The concept leaves Mayor Shah utterly baffled, as she has never heard of it. Rizel, looking weary, realizes her world lacks this knowledge and quietly laments the number of cultural shocks he has already experienced. He clarifies the distinction. The two-dimensional magic formations she uses are limited, like a flat quantity with a single use. In contrast, three-dimensional magic is unlimited, like a solid quantity, meaning the magic she can wield is also limitless. He concludes his point with a confident smile, stating that with this power, she can become as large as she wants. The idea unnerves Mayor Shah, who finds the concept of such a third-person perspective frightening. She remains skeptical, questioning how she could possibly use magic she can't even analyze. Rizel reveals that he couldn't use it at birth either and had to develop a training method. Annoyed, Mayor Shah shouts that he should have said so from the start. She then changes the subject, asking why he would train her when he could simply kill the hero himself to return to his world. He calmly states that he has two reasons. The first is to express his gratitude for the information she provided. His second, more significant reason is that he wants to recruit her, make her stronger, and bring her to his world as a member of his party. He adds a condition, saying this is only if she agrees to it. The proposition is so shocking that Mayor Shah stumbles backward into a newly formed pit in the floor, utterly flabbergasted and demanding to know what he means. He elaborates on his need for her, confessing that he faces an opponent he cannot defeat by himself. He explains that he has always needed a second hand and came to this world specifically to recruit someone worthy of the task. He looks at her with conviction, stating that he has confirmed she is the perfect candidate. Despite her status as the Demon Lord, Mayor Shah is moved. Acknowledging that he might be asking the impossible, she accepts his offer with resolve. He offers his thanks, noting her kind and reliable nature. Mayor Shah, however, cuts him off, stating that it feels like he's helping her for free and she dislikes owing favors. She declares she has a request for him in return. Intrigued, he asks her to tell him what it is. She explains that she has a younger sister of a similar power level who has been afflicted with a mysterious illness, leaving her body progressively weaker. Mersh's hope is for her sister to become a Demon Lord candidate once she departs for his world, but the illness makes her unfit for combat. She asks if he might be able to cure her. Rizel contemplates the request, admitting that medical matters are outside his expertise, but he agrees to do what he can and at least examine the girl, though he makes no promises. Overjoyed, Mayor Shah thanks him profusely. Eager to proceed, Mayor Shah urges him to hurry so they can fly back to the palace, noting that her sister's room is located directly below the throne room. Rizel readily agrees, though he playfully warns her not to get sick during the flight this time. The mere thought makes Mayor Shah feel dizzy, and she lets out a groan. Under the light of a full moon, the imposing silhouette of the Demon Lord's palace looms against the night sky. Within a lavishly appointed room, the Demon Lord Mayor Shah sat engrossed in a book. Suddenly, the air shimmered and tore open as a swirling portal materialized behind her, its unexpected arrival startling her from her reading. From the portal emerged Rizel, supporting a disoriented young woman. Mayor Shah shot to her feet in alarm, recognizing her older sister, Cecil. She demanded to know how they had bypassed her perfect barrier and who the strange man with her was. Her sister, however, was beaming with excitement. She proudly introduced the man as Rizel, a powerful individual from another world. Cecil explained with great enthusiasm that he had destroyed her barrier with ease and possessed spells that could nullify her magic effortlessly. She declared him to be, in no uncertain terms, stupidly strong, leaving Mayor Shah to process the incredible claim while Rizel looked on, slightly abashed. Cecil's expression then softened as she revealed the true purpose of their visit. She had brought Rizel here, she explained, in the hope that he might be able to cure Mersh's illness. The word illness caught Mayor Shah completely by surprise. She urged her sister to trust her and allow Rizel to perform an examination, reasoning that even if a cure wasn't possible, simply discovering the cause would be a significant step forward. Moved by her sister's plea, Mayor Shah relented. If Cecil believed in this course of action, then she would agree to it. With permission granted, Cecil instructed Rizel to proceed. He knelt before the demon lord, introducing himself and assuring her there was no need to be nervous. As Mersha placed herself in his care, Cecil added a request for him to be gentle, noting her sister's frail constitution, a complication Rizel acknowledged. After a brief examination, he had a diagnosis: hardened mana veins. The term was unfamiliar to Mersha, who looked at him with confusion. He explained that it was a symptom where her mana was stickier than normal, which in turn hindered the output from her magic circuits. A worried expression crossed Mersha's face as she asked if it was a difficult illness to treat. Rizel dismissed her concerns with a confident smile. He revealed that such a condition also existed in his world and was easily fixed with common medicine. Producing a small vial with a single pill, he described it as an artificial nanovirus medicine that would smoothen the mana in her body. Though it would take a few days to activate, one dose would be effective for the rest of her life. The sisters could only stare in utter disbelief, stunned that a lifelong ailment could be cured so simply. She reaches out her gloved hands as Rizel presents a small capsule, instructing her to swallow it. With a quiet affirmation, Mersha accepts the offered cure. Seeing her sister's hesitation, Cecil offers a gentle smile, encouraging her to believe in him. Mersha looks toward her older sister, her expression filled with a mix of hope and apprehension. She brings the capsule to her lips and, with a small gulp, swallows it. A bead of sweat traces down her temple as she waits for any effect. A moment later, Cecil grabs her shoulders, anxiously asking if the medicine worked. Mersha, looking slightly dazed, replies that she doesn't feel any different, letting out a small sigh. He interjects with some exasperation, reminding them he said it would take a few days. Cecil, becoming frantic, asks if he can just advance her sister's body's time. But Rizel flatly refuses, threatening to skip a week himself. Hearing this, Mersha quietly pleads for him to do so. Before he can act, however, Mersha's expression changes completely. Her eyes widen in astonishment as she exclaims that the flow of mana inside her feels completely different. Overjoyed, Cecil asks if it's really true. As the sisters embrace in tearful celebration, Rizel watches with a calm smile, noting that one problem is now off his list. With Rizel observing from behind, the demon Lord Mersha nervously eyes a cup on the table. She takes a deep breath, steeling her resolve. Now, here I go. Her hands glow as magical energy envelopes the cup, reverting it from broken shards back into its original, whole form. Overjoyed, she exclaims her success, as Rizel notes internally that she has indeed reversed the vase's state. She marvels at the result, declaring it wonderful and noting it's the first time she has ever used magic so easily. Her sister, Cecil, appears beside her, equally amazed. Rizel calmly observes that it seems she can now use high-level spells without breaking a sweat. The two sisters embrace, weeping with joy. Mersha sobs that she is so glad Cecil's incurable disease has finally been cured. Cecil, crying as well, agrees wholeheartedly. After their emotional reunion, Cecil asks what the medicine was about. Rizel explains that the element that disrupted her magic was something called bad mana sterol, and that everyone possesses it to some degree. His medicine, he clarifies, simply allows anyone to use magic smoothly, whether their affliction is apparent or not. She then asks if such a medicine can be mass-produced in this world. Rizel looks at her with a slight smile and confirms that it can. He offers to use it on all her troops, promising it will power them up instantly. He explains that he has a large amount left in his storage from when he marketed it to children in a poor country, enough for a 100% spread rate. The sisters are stunned to hear that such a potent substance is just sitting in his storage. Mersha, her expression turning sharp and determined, declares that she will use any help she can get, regardless of its origin. Rizel smiles, replying that he is glad it could be of help. With that, she leaps from her seat and rushes out of the room, shouting that she'll hurry and give the medicine to everyone. As Mersha departs, Cecil turns to the still-seated Rizel and makes a proposition, making her sister his companion. He looks taken aback by the sudden and serious offer. Contemplating the idea, he quietly agrees that such an arrangement would indeed be difficult. He reluctantly agrees with Cecil's proposal. She continues, explaining that because her sister is the strongest in the nation and everyone believes in her, she often feels lonely. As they speak, Mersha interjects with a gentle expression. She states that if Rizel truly needs her sister, and if Cecil herself agrees to it, then she will not stand in their way. Her maturity earns a quiet, impressed remark from him about her reliability. In contrast, Mersha clenches her fists with a determined grin, vowing to work hard enough to cover for her sister's share as well. Her enthusiasm gives way to a bashful smile as Rizel asks a practical question. Does she have any experience in governing? She sheepishly admits that she has none at all. He finds this acceptable, noting it would be useful. He then presents a small, rectangular device, introducing it as an educational magic item called an simulator that can impart knowledge from all kinds of experts. Before she can respond, Cecil bursts back into the room, triumphantly announcing that she has distributed all of the medicine. A startled Mersha welcomes her sister back, wondering what is going on. Rizel observes her arrival, noting internally that she has returned at the perfect time. Mersha, beside him, looks on with wide-eyed confusion. He turns to the newly arrived demon and states his intention. He is going to draw out her memories. Without hesitation, Cecil cheerfully agrees, dismissing it as no problem at all. Her confidence evaporates as the reality of his words sinks in. She recoils, shouting in alarm, demanding to know why he wants her memories. Beside her, Mersha simply smiles. He calmly reassures the frantic Cecil that her memories won't disappear. The A simulator, he explains, will simply copy her experience to use as teaching material. As Mersha realizes the purpose, Rizel instructs Cecil to place a component from the device on her head. He expressed his relief that she understood the process so quickly, then carefully set the memory crystal into the device. As he worked, Mersha watched with wide-eyed astonishment, sighing in disbelief. She couldn't fathom how he could accomplish such a feat, wondering aloud what he was even made of. With a confident smile, he replied that one could call it a gap in civilizations, before turning to her and asking if she was ready. With Rizel and her sister Cecil looking on, Mersha offers a final word of encouragement. She tells Cecil it's okay and to go ahead with the procedure. Rizel smiles, noting her firm resolution. Cecil closes her eyes as a finger presses a button on a nearby console. A mechanical voice confirms that the memory crystal and equipment setup are complete, announcing the beginning of the operation. As the device activates, a brilliant light envelopes Cecil, and the system announces that it is initiating the import. Below, Mersha watches her sister with a look of slight apprehension. The light subsides. Rizel confirms the process is finished, stating that the import of the simulator for the leader of the demons is complete and one use should be sufficient. He then instructs Cecil to press the red magic stone in the center of the console. With a nervous expression, she agrees. At her touch, a large screen of light materializes in the air. Both Mersha and Cecil gasp in surprise as an image of Mersha's face appears on the display. The screen presents a question, asking how one would deal with a particular situation. Mersha recognizes the scenario immediately, identifying it as the famine from the previous year, and considers choosing the third option based on the material she has. She briefly wonders what would happen if she chose the second option instead, just as the simulation declares that choice to be correct. Overjoyed, Mersha claps her hands together, celebrating that she found the best solution. Cecil beams with pride, confirming that it was indeed the correct answer, just as she'd expect from her sister. She then reveals that they actually implemented that very solution in reality. As he walks away, Rizel explains to Mersha that this is how she will gain experience, asking if the method is acceptable. Filled with renewed determination, Mersha declares that she will do her best for the present and the future, acknowledging how helpful the simulator is. Cecil pulls her younger sister close, resting her head against hers affectionately. She tells Mersha that she will be relying on her from now on. Mersha smiles brightly and agrees without hesitation. The following day, she sits across from Rizel at a table. He announces they will now begin the second stage of her training to surpass the combined hero and asks if she is ready. With determination, Mersha confirms she is and places herself in his care. Her attention is drawn to a peculiar, vase-like object on the table. She identifies it as a magic repeller, noting its oddly cute shape, and questions if it's safe to use in her room. He tells her not to worry. He explains that the device works by repelling magic within the room, creating an area of low magic density. To achieve this, it must also dissolve the magic present inside any organism within its range. The implication horrifies her. She cries out, asking if this process could be fatal and what effect it would have on her body. She presses him, asking what they are supposed to do with such a dangerous item. Finding her reaction amusing as always, he reassures her that the training won't go to such an extreme. He clarifies the purpose of the exercise. She must use her own will to prevent her magic from being drawn out of her body, to control it. The word echoes in her mind as she processes the challenge ahead. Control, he elaborates, explaining that even the slightest flaw renders a magic circle useless, which is why she must learn to control her magic in the most delicate way. As a first test, he instructs her to light a single candle while under the repeller's influence. She looks towards the candle, a bead of sweat forming on her temple as she accepts the task. Got it, she says, her expression a mix of nervousness and resolve. The demon Lord Mersha stares in confusion at the candle, whose flame has just vanished. Recovering quickly, she puffs out her chest with confidence, declaring that the task is simple and instructs Rizel to watch her. She clenches her fists, her face contorting with intense concentration and growing frustration. As the demon lord, she thinks a task this small should be nothing, yet she struggles. She channels her power, her gloved hands hovering over the candle as magical energy crackles around them. Gritting her sharp teeth, she bellows at the impudent little flame, pouring her will into relighting. Her effort results in failure. The candle's wick is snuffed out completely, leaving only a wisp of smoke. Mersha groans, her face scrunched in utter defeat. From across the table, Rizel calmly asks if she is giving up already. In response, Mersha slams her head onto the table, wailing that her magic just dissipates without effect and complaining that the task is far from delicate. She lifts her head, tears of frustration welling in her eyes as she trembles. Her despair quickly hardens into resolve. Wiping a tear from her eye, she declares fiercely that she will not give in and will keep trying until she succeeds. Her renewed, boisterous determination echoes in the room. Watching her, Rizel allows a small, satisfied smile, thinking to himself that this is the right spirit. Sometime later, as Mersha sits calmly with a cup, Rizel stands near a window. He raises his gloved hand and sharply snaps his fingers. Following the sound, he brings a finger to his lips, signaling for silence. His gaze is fixed intently on the window, having sensed something just outside. He gently places a hand on Mersha's head, attempting to calm her as she struggles with her tangled thoughts, her brow furrowed in intense concentration. His attention, however, is drawn away by the arrival of another. A young woman who strongly resembles Mersha, though with smaller horns, enters carrying a tray of refreshments. Mersha cries out in surprise at the sight of her, while Rizel simply observes the newcomer. The girl, introduced as Cecil, looks down with a hint of sadness, her shoulders slumping slightly as if dejected. He takes the tray from Cecil's hands and places it on the table between the two sisters, arranging the cups and teapot. With the interruption settled, the focus returns to the candle. Its flame, once flickering erratically, now burns with a steady, unwavering light. Mersha stares, her mouth slightly agape, looking from the perfectly controlled flame to Rizel, momentarily speechless. Her silence shatters into a cry of triumph. "I did it," she exclaims, hugging a startled Cecil. Rizel calmly assesses her work, remarking that for a first time, it's quite good, with no magic leaking and the flame holding steady. Overjoyed, Mersha reminds her sister that she had promised to keep trying until she succeeded. The burst of excitement quickly gives way to exhaustion as Mersha collapses onto the table. Seeing her success, Rizel states that since she has achieved this level of control, they will soon advance to more complex magic. Despite her fatigue, Mersha is already planning ahead, asking if he can teach her anti-travel sickness magic. Rizel agrees, adding that he will teleport them to an arena for attack magic practice when she's ready. Watching them, Cecil thinks about how strong her sister has become and eagerly asks to join them next time. Under the night sky, a grand, empty amphitheater stands silent. In the center of its stage, a small device emits a faint stream of sparkling particles into the air. Mersha stands with intense focus, her hands cupping a teardrop-shaped orb of dark, swirling energy that pulses with contained power. The energy erupts from her hands, forming a massive, complex, magical seal in the air above. Below in the stands, Rizel watches the display unfold. As the last remnants of the magical construct fade, he looks up at her and gives a simple, affirming verdict. She has passed. Hearing his approval, Mersha clenches a fist in triumph, pleased that both the activation and deactivation of the spell were executed perfectly. She turns to him, questioning if they came all this way merely to test her magical control. Rizel acknowledges her progress is impressive for only a month of training and suggests they stop using the training device for now. He then smiles, complimenting her on how observant she is. He announces that today, he will teach her something new. To demonstrate, Rizel closes his eyes and concentrates. A glowing circle of light materializes at his feet as blocks of pure energy begin to rise and assemble into a solid structure before him. He gestures toward the newly formed, towering white wall, his expression confident. He declares its name, Solid Magic. Mersha stares, her eyes wide with astonishment as she processes the sight. She repeats the term, understanding it to be a form of three-dimensional object magic. She examines the transparent wall, realizing it's formed from multiple stacked, flat surfaces. This, she understands, is the basis of the technique, also known as the outer layer of magic. He elaborates on the principle, explaining that solid magic must be formed instantaneously. Attempting to build it layer by layer would be too slow, and the structure would crumble if damaged before completion. He then challenges her directly, asking if she can replicate the feat with a sharp, confident grin. She declares that of course she can. She closes her eyes, gathering her power. Swirls of magical energy encircle her as she focuses, silently affirming her ability to succeed. Below, a solid, tiled structure begins to materialize from the raw energy, and Rizel notes, with approval, her level of concentration and the fine details of her creation. Her eyes snap open in triumph. She proudly declares her success, boasting that it's a decent result for a first attempt and only to be expected from the Demon King. He calmly informs her that he will now test the wall she has created. Startled by his sudden declaration, she can only look on as a small orb of energy materializes in his hand. The orb shoots forward, striking the magical construct and erupting in a powerful explosion that sends shockwaves through the air, causing her to cry out in alarm. When the smoke clears, she is astonished to see the wall completely unharmed, without a single scratch. As she touches the smooth surface, he remarks on its superior toughness compared to a simple flat barrier, asking if the feeling isn't awesome. She acknowledges the wall's amazing durability, but confesses that the act of creating it herself doesn't feel real to her. He reassures her that it's simply the nature of solid magic and proposes their next step, adding even more layers. With a final surge of effort, Mersha stands within a newly formed, glowing magical barrier. Sweat beads on her brow as she grits her teeth, then triumphantly declares that the spell is complete. She collapses to the ground, utterly spent but beaming with pride. She excitedly tells Rizel that she succeeded, boasting that she created a particularly thick magical construct. He smiles, praising her work and confirming that her multi-layer magic passes inspection. Lying spread-eagled on the tiled floor, she complains about the immense concentration the spell required. Rizel approaches, commending her for achieving so much in a short time and offering to heal her. He then outlines their training schedule for the following day, which will focus on magic control and the application of solid magic. When he asks if she needs a break, she firmly refuses, shaking her head. She elaborates, stating with fierce determination that she won't rest until she has mastered it, as she doesn't have the luxury to take things easy. A knowing smile crosses Rizel's face as he notes this is her typical attitude. He decides to increase the difficulty, and she eagerly accepts the challenge. Sometime later, they stand together on a rise overlooking a vast, open landscape. Mersha asks if this is the duty he had mentioned before. Rizel confirms her suspicion. He gestures across the rolling hills, revealing an enormous expanse of cultivated land. He explains that this is their nation's farmland, its primary food storage. He marvels at the view, commenting on how difficult it must be to maintain farmland of such a massive scale. Mersha explains that it barely rains in their land, which is why generations of demon lords have been required to cast rain shower spells. The purpose becomes clear to him. A demon lord must possess a huge pool of magic in order to pour rain onto this massive field. He then voices his assumption that this isn't the only reason she brought him here. Mersha smirks, acknowledging his insight. He then asks if she has figured out the structure of the multi-layer rain shower spell, noting that it should be quite efficient for this task. Mersha confirms that she has, but admits with some anxiety that this will be her first time using it, and she is not sure if she can execute it perfectly. She voices her concern, stating she wouldn't want to drag her people into a magic explosion. Rizel, with a slight smile, correctly interprets her hesitation, asking if she wants him to keep an eye on her. Her face flushes bright red as she clutches her head, overwhelmed with embarrassment. Rizel observes her reaction, noting to himself that her willingness to apply her training to her official duties demonstrates a strong desire to improve. Composing herself, she eagerly agrees, placing herself in his care. Rizel then shifts to the task at hand, asking to see her spell structure first, admitting that farming is not his area of expertise. In response, she begins the incantation, her hands conjuring a large, intricate magic circle that glows brightly before her. As he examines the glowing glyphs, he identifies the spell's intended effects: fertilizer, nutrition, accelerated growth, and more. He nods in confirmation, recognizing it as a blessed rain spell. He then asks her to show him the self-made spell she has prepared. He reassures the nervous demon lord that he will immediately point out anything that needs to be changed, so she shouldn't worry. She gives a small, hesitant okay. She takes a steadying breath, telling herself to calm down and proceed as if it were just another training session. Mana gathers around her, forming multiple concentric rings of light. As he watches her begin the spell, Rizel internally assesses her work, finding the magic circle, its structure, and the amount of mana being used to be perfect. Rizel watches from the sidelines, a look of admiration on his face. He reflects on the incredible talent before him, noting that she has made it this far on her first attempt. With a confident smile, he gives the command, "Good job, now activate." At his word, Mersha startles, but quickly steals her resolve, shouting her affirmation. She brings her hands together, and a brilliant magical energy begins to coalesce between her palms. The gathered power erupts into the sky, forming a massive, radiant sphere of light that hangs over the vast plains. Below, Mersha stands alone, channeling the immense spell. Moments later, its effects are felt across the land. A gentle rain begins to fall, nourishing the dry fields and bringing relief to the villagers who look up at the sky with hope. The villagers erupt in celebration, recognizing the downpour as the demon lord's blessed rain. They marvel at the size of the magic circle this year, offering their heartfelt thanks. Watching them, Mersha smiles, a profound sense of accomplishment washing over her as she realizes she has succeeded. Her task complete, she turns back towards Rizel, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and anxiety. She asks him tentatively for his assessment. He offers his praise without hesitation, declaring her performance perfect and predicting a record-breaking harvest. The weight of his words seems to strike him physically, and he suddenly collapses to his knees. His words of approval are all she needed to hear. Overwhelmed with relief and joy, Mersha's composure breaks, and she begins to cry, whispering how glad she is. He watches her emotional release with a gentle expression, recalling that throughout all her arduous training, she had never shed a single tear. Through her tears, she explains the source of her relief. They will no longer have to rely on overpriced trades from humans. This revelation stuns Rizel. As she worries about crying in front of him, he realizes with dawning horror that he was unaware of how deep their trouble was. Mersha continues, mentioning that their food was being ripped off, and asks if she should cast defensive magic on the crops, deepening his shock. He watched as a look of profound relief and determination washed over Mersha's face. With tears of joy welling in her eyes, she thought of how her people could finally have full stomachs. Seeing her resolve, he offered his own support, stating that he too was looking forward to the harvest. Her relief then twisted into a gleeful, almost manic expression. She let out a triumphant laugh, declaring that she couldn't wait to see the faces of the human traders. He could only look on, slightly taken aback by her sudden, vengeful shift in tone. As the blessed rain continued to fall, it was met with pure joy across the demon lands. In the fields, villagers and farmers, men, women, and children alike, looked up to the sky, their faces filled with hope and gratitude as the life-giving water soaked the earth. Within the human royal capital, snow falls gently over the grand architecture of the city, a peaceful scene belying the turmoil brewing within its halls of power. Inside one of those halls, a high-ranking noble grips the collar of his tunic, his knuckles white with tension as he processes a shocking report. He erupts in fury, demanding an explanation from a trembling subordinate for the disastrous sales figures, which have plummeted by 95%. He roars at the man not to trifle with him, while the terrified aide can only stammer in affirmation. His rage unabated, the noble continues to demand what in the hell is happening, his voice echoing through the chamber as his aide sweats, struggling to form a coherent response. The subordinate finally explains that when their merchants attempted to trade, they were met only by the demon's border officers. The message was clear. The demon realm's self-sustainability had surpassed 100%, and they no longer needed human goods. As the aide panics, recalling tales of officials executed for displeasing royalty, the noble's fury cools into a sinister resolve. He turns to another man, Regias, and asks if the 3 summoned heroes are well-equipped. After Regias confirms they are, the noble gives a chilling command. Order them to attack the demon lord city. Regias reacts with shock, but the noble clarifies his intent. Kill the demon lord and add a permanent trade condition to their contract. The first aide voices his concern, stating that the heroes aren't strong enough for such a task. The noble sighs, dismissing the worry as if it were trivial, stating he is already aware of that fact. He then reveals the true, horrifying depth of his plan. By sending the heroes to their deaths, he will force the demons to violate Act 7, Section 3 of their treaty, which forbids them from killing a summoned hero. This breach will trigger an all-out war. Regias points out the flaw, that the dead heroes couldn't fuse into the combined hero, but his objection is ignored. The noble declares that the loss of 1 or 2 heroes is an acceptable price for humanity's honor in this crisis. With the command understood, he dismisses his subordinates, who quickly excuse themselves, the merchant visibly relieved to escape with his life. Alone, he gazes at a scroll, sneering at the foolish demons. He resolves that whatever trickery they've employed, he will make them understand that they are not to disobey the will of humans. As Regias walks down the ornate hallway, the final words of the plot echo from the room he has just left. The plan is set, an attack on the demon capital. Unseen by him, 2 others linger by the same door. Banza, one of the summoned heroes, turns to his companion, admitting that eavesdropping isn't his usual habit. The young woman beside him looks back, asking if he also heard someone in that room, discussing an invasion of the demon capital. Her words confirm his worst fears, and the full, horrifying weight of the conversation crashes down upon Banza. He recognizes the king's voice outlining the monstrous plan. Have the demons kill the heroes, triggering an all-out war between the 2 races. A cold sweat breaks out on his brow as the chilling realization dawns. They're being used. Inside a grand hall, Banza walks alone, his thoughts heavy. He dismisses a dark possibility, reasoning that if their hosts truly wanted them dead, they would have been killed long ago. He stops abruptly, the doubt returning with force. He cannot shake the grim notion that the king might genuinely intend to kill all the summoned heroes. With a slight shake of his head, he tries to push the paranoia away, telling himself that he is simply thinking too much. Yet, the worry lingers in his expression. The scene shifts to a vast, desolate wasteland of rock and dust, a place utterly removed from the polished halls of the castle. In this barren landscape, Mersha, her face smudged with dirt, surveys the area with Rizel standing behind her. She remarks on how truly deserted the location is. She asks if this is where they will conduct their simulation battle. Rizel explains that her skills have grown so much in the past half-year that the usual arena would be destroyed, and confirms he can't detect any villages nearby. He turns to her with a confident grin, issuing a challenge. He asks if she doesn't want to go all out as well. She glances back, a smirk playing on her lips. She retorts that he knows the answer perfectly well, her expression eager for the coming fight. They face each other, both alight with anticipation. Rizel tells her not to pull any punches, and Mersha readily agrees, declaring that this time, she's going all out. Without a moment's hesitation, Mersha unleashes her power. Energy crackles around her as she summons a magic spear, launching a blindingly fast bolt of magical force directly at him. As her volley of magic spears hurtles towards him, Rizel calmly assesses the attack. He understands that a simple barrier will not be enough to block them all. In response, he conjures an iron barrier, a solid wall of force that meets the magical projectiles head-on, causing them to detonate on impact. He anticipated her strategy. As Mersha watches, confident that her follow-up attack will succeed, he reveals his true defense, magnet counter. Realizing she is now unleashing homing bolts, he prepares his next move. His technique neutralizes the homing bolts completely, drawing them into swirling vortexes of energy where they explode harmlessly around him. From a distance, Mersha stares in utter disbelief, unable to process what has just happened, repeatedly exclaiming that it should be impossible. He gives her no time to recover from her shock. Annoyed at her own lapse in focus, Mersha watches as he instantly vanishes from his position, executing a flash step. The ground where he just stood erupts from the force of his departure. She lets out a short breath, having narrowly avoided an immediate counterattack. With a faint magical aura swirling around his hand and a confident smile, Rizel compliments his opponent's efforts. He then declares that it is now his turn to act. His declaration is followed by the sudden appearance of a thick mist that blankets the area. Mersha instantly recognizes it as a spell designed to numb the senses, watching as Rizel stands calmly within a protective barrier. In response, Mersha grits her teeth, desperately hoping her countermeasure will work as she summons a bright orb of light. Rizel observes her, noting her use of antidote magic. He quickly realizes her spell is far more complex than a simple counter, as an intricate magic circle manifests before her. Her spell erupts into a massive, chaotic torrent of energy, engulfing Rizel's position entirely. Convinced of her victory, Mersha declares that this attack will decide the outcome of their duel. But as the energy dissipates, Rizel stands completely unharmed amidst the scorched ground, a casual smile on his face. He asks what's wrong, nonchalantly stating that he's perfectly fine, leaving Mersha staring in wide-eyed disbelief. She is utterly baffled, questioning how he could have survived without even erecting a barrier. Rizel calmly suggests she examine her magic circle again. A sudden realization dawns on her. He explains with a laugh that it was simple to rewrite her spell's target to nothing. He then cautions that it's a poor tactic to use against people, as one could never be sure if the target was secretly changed to be aimed at an ally instead. The weight of her blunder crashes down on Mersha. She collapses to the ground in utter embarrassment, lamenting that she got carried away trying to win and that using such a large-scale technique was a grave mistake. He watches her momentary despair before offering some reassurance. He tells her not to worry, as he doubts the combined hero possesses the skill to rewrite magic circles, so her strategy should still be effective in the real battle. As he walks toward her, he continues his analysis, praising her overall plan. He acknowledges that using spells with short casting times to buy time while preparing a powerful finishing blow is a solid and well-executed strategy. Reaching her, he places a reassuring hand on her head. He tells her she did well to get this far and advises that as long as she remains vigilant and doesn't let her guard down, she shouldn't lose to the combined hero. Mersha looks up, touched by his encouragement. Mersha's face is alight with fierce determination, her sharp teeth bared in a confident grin. She declares that any hardship is nothing if it means she can defeat the combined hero. In a gesture of mutual understanding and shared purpose, their fists meet in a firm bump, sealing their pact. A moment later, the intensity gives way to a simple pleasure as Mersha takes a large, satisfying bite of a sandwich he has given her. As she sits atop a rock, enjoying her meal, he stands nearby and asks if the training was worth it. She confirms that it was, admitting that it even had its fun moments. He smiles, expressing his relief. Rizel confesses that he had been worried she might burn out after setting such a difficult goal. Surprised that he was concerned for her, Mersha explains that she is now incredibly motivated, especially since she is learning so many new things, like defensive spells. Her earnestness gives him pause, and he reflects internally that she's quite different from the friends he used to have. Meeting his gaze, Mersha reaffirms her promise to become his companion, stating with conviction that she fully intends to keep it. Changing the subject, Mersha marvels at how amazing the sandwich is. Rizel casually mentions that Cecil and Sieg made them. This news shocks Mersha, who can't believe Sieg can cook. Rizel clarifies that Sieg is actually ranked as one of the top 2 chefs in the entire kingdom, prompting him to muse that one truly can't judge a book by its cover. With a satisfying stretch, Mersha suggests that it is time for them to head back. Standing a short distance away, Rizel calmly agrees. As they begin to depart, he suddenly stops, a questioning look on his face. Noticing his pause, Mersha turns and asks him what is wrong. The ground trembles and erupts as a colossal dragon bursts forth from beneath the earth, its powerful roar echoing as it demands to know who dares disturb its slumber. The sight leaves Mersha trembling in shock as she identifies the creature. Seeing her reaction, Rizel immediately asks if she knows the beast. She snaps back that she certainly does not, admitting it is her first time ever seeing one. Her expression then turns serious as she explains that the creature is similar to one from ancient legends. She begins to recount a tale from 10,000 years ago about a civilization on this very land that was annihilated by a single dragon. The legend states that amidst the destruction, the few who were lucky enough to survive were allowed to thrive and give birth to the next generation, but only under one strict condition. They must never disturb the dragon. As the creature's massive foot plants itself firmly on the ground, Mersha prepares to reveal the name of that legendary dragon. Its name is John Cena, the slumbering, ancient dragon. The realization crashes down upon them both. They have awakened something truly unbelievable. Rizel whispers in horror that they have done something terrible, recognizing that he wouldn't want his own sleep disturbed. Beside him, Mersha is utterly speechless, her jaw hanging open. His shock, however, quickly gives way to a startling calm. He turns to the still panicked Mersha and asks what they should do now, casually suggesting they punch it back to sleep. In response, a deep, guttural laughter rumbles from the ancient dragon's throat. The colossal beast dismisses their whispers, its voice dripping with contempt as it addresses the puny demon and her companion who dared suggest punching it. As Mersha chides Rizel for provoking the creature, the dragon's fury ignites, and it roars its intent to turn their arrogant attitude into ash. As a torrent of destructive energy erupts from its maw, hurtling towards them, Rizel calmly instructs Mersha to activate and absorb barrier. The barrier holds. Mersha stares in disbelief, realizing she successfully blocked the attack. Rizel reassures her with a confident smile, explaining that she surpassed the power of that dragon long ago. The ancient beast itself looks on, momentarily stunned by this turn of events. He continues, stating that the once slumbering dragon is now a foe well within her power to defeat. Recovering its composure, the dragon scoffs, reminding them that it was merely a single attack. The situation calls to mind the old pact made between races. Should the ancient dragon awaken, the combined hero of the humans was tasked with its subjugation. The demons, deemed not strong enough, were to provide support, resources, and ultimately serve as bait. Recalling this humiliating agreement fills Mersha with rage. Her expression twists into one of fury as she vows to defeat the beast herself, nullifying the pact by bringing back its corpse. Rizel notes with a hint of pride that she is finally making the face of a true demon lord. He encourages her, framing the battle as a memorable first fight and good practice for an eventual confrontation with the combined hero. Mersha's demeanor shifts to one of eager excitement. The thought of her first real battle being against an ancient dragon makes her arms tremble in anticipation. Her resolve, now absolute, she declares that she will hunt the dragon for the future of all demons. The beast roars back its challenge, promising to incinerate her until not even ashes remain. Unfazed, she gathers crackling energy into her hands, focusing her power to form a potent offensive spell, a magic spear. The spear of pure magic lances through the air, striking the dragon directly in the head with a blinding explosion. The creature bellows, not in agony, but in pure, unadulterated wrath. Its furious roar was cut short as a series of blinding explosions erupted across its head, engulfing the colossal beast in a torrent of destructive energy. The ground trembled as the ancient dragon's immense body crashed down, its form vanishing within a cloud of dust. Mersha stared in disbelief, wondering aloud if the fight was already over. She turned to Rizel, who observed that while Mersha had exceeded his expectations, the dragon was surprisingly weak. He declared his intent to finish it off completely to avoid any trouble, adding that he would use its body for negotiations with the humans. His pragmatic statement prompted Mersha to consider their next steps. She noted that she already had the evidence of her victory, questioning what they should do with the remains. Rizel mused on the value of the materials, suggesting it would be a waste not to use the body of a 1,000-year-old dragon for crafting magic tools. His eyes suddenly widened as a realization struck him. "Ah, I got it," he exclaimed. Intrigued, Mersha asked what interesting idea he had just come up with. He smiled reassuringly, telling her not to rush. He explained that he would need her help with his plan and would explain it to her clearly. Later that night, beneath the full moon, he presented her with an object. Mersha questioned the sudden gift, though she admitted she was happy. Her handmaiden urged her to accept it, promising that Rizel would explain later. As she held it, the item began to radiate a soft, ethereal light. She stared down at it, her voice trailing off in wonder as she tried to comprehend what it was. He then revealed its nature, a magic sword forged from the slumbering, ancient dragon. He explained that because it was made with her own magic circles, it was a weapon that only she, or someone of her bloodline, could ever wield. She clutched the weapon, overwhelmed. She insisted she couldn't accept something so amazing, claiming it would be a waste for her to use it. As she protested, her thoughts turned to her sister, Cecil. Her sister, Cecil, looks at her with sharp resolve, explaining that even if they defeat the current combined hero, others will surely follow. Cecil declares that Mersha will be the one to defeat them in her stead. Steeling herself, Mersha accepts this future, vowing to take her sister's place. She grips the new sword, a silent understanding passing through her. Once her sister is gone, she will be the one fighting. With her choice made, she fully accepts the responsibility. Nearby, a handmaiden expresses her awe to Rizel, finding it incredible that he defeated the ancient dragon. Rizel, however, calmly corrects her, stating it's a shame he wasn't the one who accomplished the feat, and mentions he will place the sword in his storage magic. Her confusion is cut short as Cecil proudly boasts that she was the one who beat the slumbering dragon. The handmaiden is stunned. From a short distance, Rizel mutters that he can hear them, wryly recalling how scared Cecil had been at first. Mersha then asks if every part of the dragon was used to forge the sword. With a wide, toothy grin, Cecil reveals they have a lot of leftovers and announces her grand idea. They will hold a festival. The sisters share a moment of pure excitement, realizing that a festival with dragon meat as the main dish is far too tempting to pass up. They decide to invite everyone in the city to share in the feast. Their plan quickly takes shape. Cecil declares she will summon all the workers to prepare, entrusting the task of butchering the dragon to Rizel. He accepts, promising to handle it with the utmost care. Soon after, A grand celebration fills a castle courtyard. Scores of demon citizens gather around long tables laden with food, a joyous festival brought to life by the remains of the defeated ancient dragon. Among the crowd, the citizens express their disbelief and delight. They marvel at the chance to eat dragon meat, something they never thought possible. One explains to another that while a dragon's meat is usually too tough, it becomes tender after the creature has slumbered for thousands of years. Observing the peaceful scene, Cecil reflects that while defeating the dragon has granted them this moment, their struggle has only just begun. She vows to do everything in her power to maintain this peace. Rizel agrees, adding a grim warning. The real fight starts now, as the combined hero's strength is on a completely different level than the dragon's. Meanwhile, the source of their concern, the summoning goddess Risha, stood with the combined hero, contemplating her own long-laid plans. She acknowledged her millennia-long manipulation of humanity from the shadows, recognizing her own dangerous nature. With the hero under her influence, she knew her position was formidable, even referring to herself as a shameless goddess. Back in the demon realm, Cecil addressed Rizel directly, expressing her faith that he and her sister will be able to handle the coming threat. She stressed the need for them to pull together, a sentiment to which he somberly agreed. Her attention then shifted to Mersha. A predatory grin spread across Cecil's face as she insisted on handling the fight herself, claiming she had already envisioned their enemy's defeat. She declared that once the battle was won, she would depart, leaving all diplomatic matters in Mersha's hands, but not before warning her younger sister not to compromise later. The thought of unleashing her full power brought a sinister chuckle to her lips. This sudden display of brutal intensity left both Mersha and Rizel utterly unnerved. Staring wide-eyed, Mersha could only stammer out an agreement, the sheer ferocity of her older sister proving to be a terrifying sight. Within the Demon Lord's castle, a grand feast has concluded. Surrounded by her attendants, Mersha leans back, utterly sated, and lets out a contented sigh. She declares she is so full she cannot eat another bite. She then collapses onto a nearby sofa, prompting her sister, Cecil, to chide her for such sloppy behavior. Watching them, Rizel remarks with a laugh that Mersha certainly doesn't act like a demon lord. Unbothered, Mersha simply pats her stomach satisfied. The lighthearted moment is shattered as Risha suddenly appears before him. An intense, unspoken tension crackles between them as they lock eyes, their faces mere inches apart. His focus shifts abruptly as Mersha gets his attention. He confirms that he has noticed the disturbance as well. She reports 3 individuals at the front gate and asks for his thoughts, noting that while their combat powers vary, their presence is a problem. The intruders are none other than the summoned heroes, standing grimly before the castle walls. From their perspective, the heroes survey their destination. Leol remarks that it only took them a few months to arrive, expressing disappointment at how anticlimactic it feels. He dismisses his companion's caution, declaring that since their target is the Demon Lord, he will handle the negotiations. Banza clicks his tongue in annoyance at Leol's recklessness as the bald hero strides forward, shouting for the demons to bring out their lord immediately. His demand is met by 2 demon guards who refuse him entry, one calling him an impolite orc. Enraged by the insult, Leol grins, stating that he could use a warm-up before facing the demon lord. Unflinching, the guard vows to defend the door with her life. Meanwhile, Mersha, Rizel, and Risha watch the confrontation unfold on a large monitor. Mersha observes that they are in quite a pickle. Rizel grimly agrees, stating that they have no choice but to proceed. He reasons that he cannot simply barge in with his current appearance, as he is supposed to be dead. When Mersha asks if he intends to change, he confirms that is his plan. At the castle gates, the confrontation escalated. The bald hero, Leol, lunged at one of the demon guards, his blade drawn. He roared a challenge, daring the guard to face him. The clash of their weapons erupted in a blinding flash of energy. The force of the impact threw both combatants backward, the guard crying out in exertion while the hero was momentarily stunned. In the space between them, a strange object materialized. A large, dark cocoon, wrapped in shimmering bands of magic, pulsed with an unknown power. The other heroes, Banza and Frodo, watched from a distance, questioning what was happening, while the demon guards stared in disbelief at the sudden magical intervention. From the shadows of the castle gate, the demon Lord Mersha emerged, her expression one of cold fury. Beside her stood Rizel, his presence dark and imposing. She addressed the intruders with contempt, reminding them they were trespassing in the Demon Lord's castle and that their actions constituted crime. Her powerful aura was immediately apparent to the heroes. Leol recognized her as an upper-class demon, warning Banza that a direct attack would be fatal. The demon guards, flustered by their lord's appearance, apologized and offered to gather troops to eliminate the intruders, but Mersha calmly told them it was fine. Seeing an opening, Banza realized this high-level demon might be willing to talk, providing a chance to get some answers. He was about to step forward, but Leol's cynical remark about the demon's arrogance gave him pause. Banza held up a hand, telling his companion to wait, as he had an idea and just needed a moment. He then stepped forward, addressing Mersha and Rizel directly. He began with an apology for their impolite actions, explaining that as people not from this world, they were unfamiliar with its customs. He stated that they understood she was a superior demon and that they only wanted to know one thing. He politely asked if she would be willing to listen. Behind him, Frodo quietly wondered if this was some kind of battle plan, but Leol advised they should just leave the strategizing to Banza for now. Meanwhile, Rizel observed them, internally confirming that these were the summoned heroes who had caused so much trouble before. He found their current behavior, forcing their way to the front gate and demanding a fight, only to ask for a talk, to be utterly baffling. He leaned toward Mersha, his voice low. He asked her if the specific words, hero, combine, meant anything to her. The question struck a nerve. Banza's face contorted in shock as he realized Rizel knew something significant. Rizel coolly confirmed his knowledge. Mersha, noticing the hero's reaction, whispered to Rizel that he seemed to be onto something. Rizel agreed, telling her to leave the matter to him. With a nod, Mersha accepted, instructing him to prepare a teleport as they were changing locations. As the teleportation spell began to form, the summoned heroes reacted with alarm. Banza, clenching his fists, tried to reassure himself that the situation was under control, while Frodo demanded to know the meaning of Rizel's actions. Their questions were answered not with words, but with a blinding flash of light as the intricate magic circle flared to life beneath them, its runes glowing with immense power. The brilliance subsided, leaving them in an unfamiliar, dark space. Leol, despite the danger, marveled at the complexity of the magic circle, but his awe quickly soured to fury as he realized their predicament. He roared that they had been tricked, a grim conclusion Banza echoed, lamenting that they were foolish to trust the demon's words. His outburst echoed in the vast chamber they now occupied. A commanding female voice cut through the tension, ordering the summoned heroes to lift their heads. They looked up, their expressions a mixture of fear and confusion, to see a young woman with prominent horns regarding them coolly. She formally welcomed them to an audience with the Demon Lord. Standing before them on a raised platform, flanked by Rizel, the horned woman spread her arms and made a grand declaration. She was the Demon Lord. The revelation struck the heroes with the force of a physical blow. Leol stared, realizing this was the Demon Lord. Frodo wondered how they had been teleported so completely, while Banza could only process the absurdity of being granted an audience with their supposed enemy. Breaking through his shock, Banza pleaded for answers, desperately asking about the true nature of a combined hero and the real reason for their summoning. The Demon Lord met his frantic questions with a confident smile, offering to tell them everything they needed to know about the world. She began to explain as they were led down a long, imposing corridor. The term combined hero, she revealed, was literal. For decades, summoned heroes like them were merely fodder, sacrificed to create a single, powerful being, humanity's ultimate weapon and the arch-nemesis of all demons. The horrific truth was too much for Leol to accept. He erupted in rage, demanding solid proof against the human kingdom and accusing her of trickery. As Frodo urged him to calm down, Banza's face was a mask of despair. He understood now. He knew it was the truth. His despair was interrupted by the Demon Lord's voice. Mersha, looking down from her seat, acknowledged the heroes' distrust but chided their short tempers, announcing it was now Rizel's turn. As Rizel stepped forward, Leol and Frodo looked on in confusion, demanding to know who he was. Rizel greeted them with a calm smile, noting it had been a while and that they must not recognize him in his current attire. He addressed their unspoken questions, asking what was the matter. The heroes reacted with stunned disbelief. Banza stammered, recognizing him, while Leol exclaimed that he was supposed to be dead. Rizel confirmed he had something he wanted them to see. As he held up a small, glowing object, Leol eyed him with suspicion, questioning if this was another trick. Rizel simply suggested they confirm it with their own eyes. The device in his hand flared with light, projecting a vision directly into their minds. The scene materialized, a grand office where the king sat behind his desk. Standing before him was a young man with light-colored hair and bandaged eyes, a numerical value of 39,124 floating above his head. The vision was startlingly clear. Banza immediately identified the location as the king's office. Frodo marveled at the intricate details, while Leol, shocked, demanded to know how Rizel could possess such knowledge. As they reeled, Mersha watched with a satisfied smile, finding the development convenient. The vision focused on the figure before the king, a person the heroes had never seen within the palace walls. His appearance sparked debate. Banza noted he looked like a normal human, but Frodo remained defiant, insisting he wouldn't be tricked. Rizel cut through their confusion, identifying the figure as the combined hero, the result of them all. He then drew their attention to the number, explaining it was the combat power he had read from the hero upon his own arrival in this world. That number, 39124, hung in Frodo's mind. A chilling realization began to form. Why would the kingdom need them if they already possessed someone so powerful? He understood, then, that this must be the fruit of all the heroes who had been summoned and combined over time. His realization sent a shockwave of despair through the group. Banza cried out, understanding that this meant they could never go back to their world. Frodo, utterly defeated, lamented that he would never see his family again. Leol slammed his fist down in rage, cursing the situation. Mersha's voice cut through their anguish, confirming their worst fears. The summoned heroes were nothing but fodder from the very beginning. She elaborated from her throne, her voice laced with a long-held bitterness. For years, she explained, the demons have been suppressed by the overwhelming force and numbers wielded by the humans. This, she declared with finality, was the undeniable truth of their world. Her gaze hardened into one of cold fury. She warned them not to think they would be let off for free. The hatred born from years of torture, the hatred for the pain inflicted upon their families, friends, and companions, all of it demanded retribution. Before her, Banza fell to his knees, his voice cracking as he pleaded for help. He offered anything, to become a laborer, a slave, if only they would be spared. Unmoved, the demon lord glanced past him toward his companions, Leol and Frodo, and coolly inquired about their thoughts on the matter. Leol, his face a mask of desperation, muttered that he just had to go home, no matter what. Frodo joined the chorus, begging for their lives. Together, the three heroes prostrated themselves, their voices echoing in the throne room as they implored the Lord of Demons to show mercy and save them. A slow, chilling smile spread across her face as she looked down upon the groveling man. I see, she purred, her voice laced with malice. In that case, I'll give you your first order. Her command was simple and absolute. The three of them were to become dead corpses. Her words hung in the air, and the three heroes could only stare back, their faces etched with disbelief and dawning horror. Within the royal castle, the king reviewed a troubling report. A mixed party of human and demon adventurers had fought, but only the humans survived. The incident was ruled an accident, but he found the proposed punishment, a mere year in prison, far too lenient. He mused that under demon law, such an act would have undoubtedly resulted in execution. Elsewhere, a noble with dark, tied-back hair concurred with the assessment as he processed the paperwork. He found the entire court case annoying and the reports a pain to deal with. As he grumbled to himself, a brilliant halo of light suddenly materialized in the air above him. His thoughts were shattered by a deafening crash that echoed through the room. Both he and the king, in their separate locations, flinched in shock. The noble, clutching his head, wondered aloud in terror if a pillar had just collapsed. The sound was accompanied by a heavy thud. On the floor of the noble's office, one of the summoned heroes lay motionless, a faint groan escaping his lips. He wasn't alone. The noble's eyes widened in sheer terror as he took in the full, horrific scene. 3 dead bodies were now strewn across his office floor. Stammering in disbelief, he stared at the gruesome wounds, realizing with mounting dread that there were gaping holes torn through their guts. The question echoed in his mind. Why were they in his office? The sheer impossibility of it all forced him to a desperate conclusion. Sweat beaded on his brow as he thought, this is a nightmare. It was no dream. The event had been set in motion an hour earlier, inside the Demon King's castle. There, Mersha sat upon her throne, Rizel at her side, as she addressed the 3 summoned heroes. She gave them her first order, go ahead and become corpses. Her command was met with immediate disbelief and outrage. Frodo, his eyes wide behind his glasses, accused her of tricking them, while Leol angrily demanded to know what she meant. She met their shock with a cold, unwavering gaze, her expression unreadable. I told you, she stated calmly. I speak only the truth. Her companion, Rizel, suggested she should stop teasing the summoned heroes. With a small laugh, the demon lord agreed, admitting she had wanted to see their dumbfounded expressions. The heroes themselves could only stare in utter shock and confusion. Mersha offered a placid apology, explaining she was holding a bit of a grudge. Rizel, sweating slightly, pointed out that her words had angered the bald warrior. Leol's face contorted with rage as he demanded to know if she couldn't at least limit her pranks. He ignored Banza's attempt to calm him, admitting that while he may be simple and act before thinking, he still demanded an explanation that made sense. Mersha, however, advised him not to insult himself, adding with a small, knowing smile that she likes honest men like him. She then turned her head slightly, her expression becoming more neutral. She then turned to Rizel, asking if he could handle the rest of the explanation. He calmly agreed. Before he could begin, the heroes started speculating on how he could have survived after they were told he was dead. Frodo questioned how he managed to fool both the assassins and the king, while Banza theorized about some form of special illusion magic. Leol, still agitated, wondered if they had been brainwashed. Rizel cut through their theories with a simple, direct statement. He made a fake body. The revelation left the heroes momentarily stunned, with Frodo realizing the truth, Banza finding it disturbing, and Leol simply repeating the words in disbelief. Leol demanded to know what he meant, and Banza grimly concluded that Rizel must have murdered someone to procure a body. Annoyed by the accusation, Rizel clarified that he created his own body and didn't kill anyone. From the side, Mersha stifled a laugh, amused that they didn't trust him at all. Leol recoiled, declaring he can't deal with ghosts, while Frodo asked if that meant Rizel himself was a fake. Rizel then presented a small, card-like object, explaining that he used this multi-functional cell to create a clone. He elaborated that it was a complex spell combining many others, and conceded that their world's understanding of clone magic was not yet advanced enough for them to fully grasp it. The heroes looked on in awe. Leol grumbled that even though he was told it was a clone, the fact that Rizel was alive still irked him, though he conceded it was better than dying in battle. Banza asked for clarification on what a clone was, while Leol expressed fear at the thought of a doppelganger of himself existing. Rizel confirmed that Banza's understanding was theoretically correct, but trailed off as he began to explain a key limitation. The clones cannot be sustained. He emphatically declares that they must use the clones this time, ignoring all objections. As Leol flinches in surprise, Mersha apologizes for Rizel's stubbornness and asks the heroes to help manage him. With a surge of magical energy, the forms begin to take shape. The three heroes stare in awe at their perfect, naked duplicates. Leol mutters in disbelief at how much the clone looks just like him. Rizel explains that these are high-grade clones, perfect for faking their deaths, but reiterates their key weakness. They cannot sustain themselves. Frodo raises a practical concern, asking what they should do with the bodies, noting the danger of simply leaving them in human territory. Banza agrees, adding they would be unidentifiable. Rizel assures them he has a solution, and Mersha elaborates. They will send the clones directly to the king's office, accompanied by a letter imbued with their own magic. Elsewhere, in a lavish bedchamber, a nobleman with a dark goatee groans as he is stirred from his sleep. His eyes flutter open to see Regias by his bedside, who expresses relief that his majesty is finally awake. Regias explains that they heard him screaming and rushed in to find him surrounded by corpses. The memory floods back to him. The nobleman sits bolt upright, his eyes wide with alarm, demanding to know what became of the bodies. He listens as Regias reports that, after identification, the corpses were confirmed to be the three summoned heroes. The nobleman grimly concludes that the demon lord has finally crossed the line. However, Regias interjects with a puzzling detail. The bodies arrived far too quickly. In response to this anomaly, Regias presents a flat, rectangular device, suggesting it might hold the answer. The nobleman eyes it with suspicion, asking what it is. He takes the device, learning it was placed beside the bodies in a letter. He realizes it's a teleportation device with an astonishing range of 20,000 kilometers. Calculating the 4,000-kilometer distance to the Demon Lord's castle, he concludes with grim certainty that this is no bluff. His face contorted with rage, the noble demanded to know how the demons had managed such an incredible feat. Had they found a retired sage? And what of the letter? Before he could continue his tirade, Regias stepped forward, presenting the document with a declaration. Here it is, as he read. The words of Demon Lord Mersha dripped with mockery. She thanked the human king for the gift of the three summoned heroes, informing him that the demons had dealt with the slumbering ancient dragon themselves and no longer required his help. With that, she declared she was nullifying the conditions regarding the dragon, accepting the war he had declared via the heroes, and would be making significant changes to their trade agreements. The letter concluded with a flippant postscript noting how delicious dragon meat was, leaving the noble trembling with suppressed fury. The noble erupted, slamming his fist down as he roared about the sheer impudence of the letter. They were supposed to take the initiative, yet the demon lord had declared war on them first. Regias pleaded with his majesty to calm down, warning that such anger would only harm his body, but his words were lost in the storm of the noble's fury. He dismissed Regias' suggestion to send a scout first, calling the letter mere words. Instead, he commanded Regias to prepare the combined hero for battle, ordering him to burn the demon's territory and strike them all down. When Regias hesitated, the noble's voice dropped to a menacing whisper, asking if he would like to be executed for treason. Defeated, Regias could only agree. Alone in the dark, the noble seethed, vowing to send the combined hero to remind the insolent demon lord of her place. He believed her arrogance was temporary, and a wicked laugh echoed from the castle as he reveled in his anticipated victory. Meanwhile, in the demon realm, Mersha burst out laughing. She pointed triumphantly, shouting for everyone to look. The king had completely fallen for the pranks Rizel had pulled. The three summoned heroes, now sitting comfortably, watched her display, with one muttering that she was nothing more than a bratty girl. Mersha admitted with a chuckle that even she couldn't believe he would fall for everything. Rizel then revealed it was his idea to add a button to the teleportation device that would deliver a shock, correctly predicting the king wouldn't follow instructions. As she recalled the moment, Mersha realized with delight that the king had actually pushed it. Rizel confirmed it with a smile, noting that the full message would therefore reach him soon. Back in the present, the heroes reflected on their change in fortune. Banza noted the luxurious treatment they'd received, while Frodo lamented not realizing the truth sooner, and Leol expressed his shame. Rizel observed their relaxed state, and Mersha remarked that they were lucky to have been cloned before they were combined. The heroes all agreed that cloning was a far better fate than being forced to merge with someone else. Later, as Rizel sat alone, a knock came at his door. A voice from the other side announced the arrival of the teleportation device used to send the food. Acknowledging the arrival, Rizel simply instructed them to enter. He accepts the letter from Demon Lord Mersha, who cheerfully tells him she'll rely on him again. Acknowledging her with a simple good work, he takes his leave as the door closes behind him. The letter is the only response the humans sent. She sits down with the sealed envelope, her expression turning thoughtful as she wonders what the humans wrote in their reply. Elsewhere, Rizel faces the summoned heroes, a confident smirk on his face. When they ask about the letter, he reveals with a sharp grin that the king took the bait, leaving the heroes looking on with anxious expressions. A month passes, In the western Minaris Desert, the human kingdom officially declares war, citing the demon's breach of the Human-Demon Treaty. Their ultimate weapon, the combined hero, is to be deployed with the objective of turning the demon's land into a sea of fire. The declaration weighs heavily on the summoned heroes. Leol observes that the war is finally starting. Frodo admits he's never been so nervous, and Banza confesses that this will be his first time fighting an opponent stronger than himself. Mersha, having heard Rizel's assessment of the situation, looks at him with a questioning gaze, asking what he means. He responds coolly, dismissing her unspoken concerns by stating that it's not as if she'll even have a chance to shine in the coming battle. His confident, almost dismissive, remark leaves the three heroes utterly bewildered, unable to comprehend his meaning. He elaborates on his strategy, explaining that the humans intend for this war to be a swift victory using a smaller force. Their goal is to display the overwhelming power of the combined hero to assert total dominance. Because of this single-minded focus, he concludes the chance of them employing complex strategies like an ambush is extremely low. His plan becomes clear. He intends to confront the combined hero directly. By defeating their ultimate trump card, they will shatter the humans' morale. Mersha appears, fully endorsing his audacious plan. The heroes, however, are stunned into disbelief, realizing the immense risk he is proposing. His audacious declaration hung in the air, his silhouette looming behind the demon Lord Mersha. He would fight the combined hero on his own. Mersha, her expression hardening with resolve, seemed to accept the weight of his words. Under the light of a full moon, Rizel stands before a grand castle, contemplating his preparations. He murmurs to himself that this should suffice. From behind, Banza approaches, greeting him and asking what he's doing out so early, wondering if it's a morning walk or some last-minute prep for the impending battle. Banza's attention is drawn to a spherical device hovering nearby, and he asks if the preparations are related to it. Rizel confirms, explaining that it is a magic tool for image reception, and that they have been placed all throughout the Demon Lord's territory, including the castle itself. He is stunned by the revelation, exclaiming in disbelief at the sheer quantity of magic stones that would be required to cover the entire territory. Rizel calmly clarifies that while he was missing a few, Frodo was able to provide them, thanks to his ability to use storage magic. Still processing the scale of the operation, Banza asks why Rizel is setting up all these tools, marveling that he accomplished it all in a single day since the battle was only decided upon yesterday. With a confident smile, Rizel reveals his plan. He intends to broadcast the fight between the Demon Lord and the combined hero. The realization dawns on Banza with horror. The real threat wasn't the Demon Lord, but Rizel himself. He demands to know the purpose of such a broadcast. Rizel explains that it is to show the entire world the true strength of the current Demon Lord, ensuring that no one would dare make a move against her territory, even in her absence. His confusion deepens at the mention of her absence. Rizel's expression turns serious as he reveals his ultimate goal. He is bringing her to his world. There is someone there he needs to defeat. The revelation strikes Banza with the force of a physical blow. He breaks into a cold sweat, struggling to comprehend the existence of an enemy that even Rizel cannot defeat, a foe beyond the capabilities of the summoned heroes. Despite his shock, Banza offers his help with the plan. As Rizel walks away, thanking him, Banza murmurs his relief that they did not have to fight one another. Elsewhere, by a vast, desolate shore, Serena holds a magical device to her lips, its surface crackling with energy. She performs a quick sound check, her voice echoing slightly across the landscape. She begins her address, her voice booming out to all demons. She announces that the long-awaited fight between the Demon Lord and the combined hero is about to begin. With great fanfare, she declares that in the west of the Melina's desert, the days of oppression will finally end. Introducing herself as Serena, the Demon Lord's close guard, she confirms she will be commentating on the event. From a balcony, Mersha and her handmaiden watch the broadcast, the latter confirming that it is live. She observes the opposing army, noting their numbers are fewer than anticipated. Rizel explains that this is partly due to their underestimation of demon strength and the sudden declaration of war. On the field, the combined hero scoffs, remarking that facing only two opponents is a clear sign of being underestimated. He then calls out to the Demon Lord by name, "Yo, Mersha," adding with a smirk that it has been some time, and she has become quite the woman. His tone turns dismissive as he claims his heart remains unmoved by someone whose name he can't even recall. He wonders aloud about the goddess's absence, arrogantly asserting that he alone is more than sufficient for this task. Back with the Demon Lord, Rizel asks if she can sense the goddess. Mersha confirms her presence, but observes that she isn't prepared for battle, likely viewing the confrontation as dull. This leads her to a sudden realization. The city must be empty. The meaning behind her words, an empty city, causes Rizel to pause. He suddenly recalls something important and, with a sheepish apology for his clumsiness, asks if he can entrust the battle to her. Mersha eyes him suspiciously, accusing him of scheming once more. She sighs, a hint of exasperation on her face. Resigned, she tells him to just go, correctly assuming he would leave no matter what she said. With a smile, he tells her he will look forward to it and departs. Mersha waves him off nonchalantly, confidently stating that the fight will be concluded by the time he gets back. Her opponent, noticing she is now alone, taunts her, asking if she plans to face him by herself. He adds that he wouldn't mind if she brought all her forces against him. The demon lord erupts in laughter, baffling the hero. She mocks his inability to perceive the vast difference in their power, finding it hilarious that she once feared such a small fry. As she speaks, small, dark wings sprout from her back. She inwardly mocked the hero's weakness, finding it amusing that he fell for her provocation so easily. Enraged by her taunts, the combined hero declared that he would finish this himself, ordering his companions to stay back. From the sidelines, they voiced their assent. The hero's declaration was met with a ferocious promise from the demon lord, who snarled that this would be his final day. He returned the sentiment with equal intensity, his face set in a determined grimace. He wasted no time, lunging forward with his sword held high. Boasting that he would end the fight in 10 seconds, he unleashed a blindingly fast slash of energy. Mersh's eyes widened in apparent surprise at the speed and power of the assault. The powerful strike landed, engulfing Mersh's position in a massive explosion of light and force. The hero coughed, feeling the strain of his own immense output of energy. But as the dust settled, Mersha floated in the air completely unscathed. She looked down on him with disdain, questioning how he could fail to even dodge such an attack. The hero grunted in frustration, realizing with alarm that his own healing was taking far too long. He grit his teeth, trying to convince himself that the damage was minimal. From the shadows, Mersha's eye glinted as a small orb of dark energy formed before her. The small orb erupted in a blinding flash, catching the hero completely off guard. He scoffed, dismissing the blast as nothing more than petty tricks. In that instant of distraction, a shadowy tendril of energy burst through his chest from behind. Staggering from the unexpected blow, he coughed up blood, a single thought consuming him. He needed to use his full heal magic immediately. Appearing behind him, Mersha simply called him an idiot, a swirling vortex of dark power held in her hand. His wounds vanished as his healing magic took effect. He turned, furious, demanding to know how she dared. Mersha smiled, thanking him for waiting while she completed her own full heal. She gestured to a gaping, dark wound in her own chest, now rapidly closing. She mused aloud about the many reasons he shouldn't have gotten so cocky, leaving him and his companion utterly stunned. She hovers above her opponent, her power fully restored, and declares the simple truth of their conflict. She is strong, and he is weak. That is all. Her words are final. The combined hero, his body now grievously wounded, collapses backward onto the ground. He can only utter a faint acknowledgement before succumbing as she watches his defeat with a calm, detached expression. She turns away, her internal thought a simple dismissal of the entire affair. How boring. Meanwhile, those watching the broadcast react with disbelief. The summoning goddess, Risha, stares at the projection, stammering in shock at the hero's utter defeat. From her own vantage point, the demon warrior Serena also expresses her disappointment, finding the one-sided battle to be an unbelievable and unsatisfying spectacle. An unseen announcer's voice booms across the realm, proclaiming the demon lord's overwhelming victory for all to hear. With the victory declared, the broadcast concludes with a final message of glory to the demon lord before the transmission cuts out. The battle now truly over, Mersha turns to Rizel, who has appeared nearby wearing a pair of horns as a disguise. She asks if he was watching. He confirms he was, praising her amazing performance and noting that he has just finished his own business. She sighs and asks what he was doing. Rizel cheerfully explains that he stole the combined hero's device, stunning Mersha. He calmly requests an audience to discuss its use. When she, flustered, asks if he analyzed it, he confidently confirms he did so within seconds. He then turns his gaze to the sky and calls out with authority, addressing the god of summoning directly. He announces that he possesses the hero's device and commands the deity to appear at once. He waited, but the sky remained empty. After a moment, he observed that the goddess was not there. Standing beside him, Mersha noted that she wasn't taking the bait. His confidence was unshaken. He calmly remarked that it didn't matter. She would eventually show up, though he thought to himself that his summons had been too loud. Mersha, however, was impressed by his forceful approach and eagerly declared that they should proceed. With a slight smile, he agreed. He then revealed his true intention, stating that it was time for the experiment, an experiment involving both himself and the combined hero. Mersha dismissively tells Rizel to go, insisting she'll be finished with her own task before he even returns. She confidently asserts that she'll be fine with or without him. With a slight smile, Rizel replies that he will look forward to it. He turns his attention to a snow-covered town below. As he surveys the area, he concludes that with their defenses so weak, he should be able to steal the combination device without issue. Consulting a glowing map, he confirms his target's location. According to the schematics, the device should be just ahead. He enters a chamber and finds it completely empty, just as he expected. The device rests on a pedestal, unguarded. He scans the room, finding no traps, and wonders if this is due to carelessness or simple arrogance. He takes the object, noting that he acquired it far too easily. When no alarms or defenses are triggered, he decides to use the spare time to analyze it. A slow smile spreads across his face as he realizes its potential, deeming it a useful tool. His task complete, he finds Mersha, who has just finished her own battle. She asks if he saw her fight, and he confirms that he did, complimenting her. When she asks what he was doing, he nonchalantly reveals he was stealing the combination device, stunning her into silence. He suggests they calm down and find an audience, then asks if she wants to use the device on something immediately. Flustered, she agrees to a detailed analysis, stating that it's no problem. His voice then rings out across the desolate landscape, calling to an unseen entity. He announces to the god of summons that he possesses the combination device and demands they appear at once. After a moment of silence, Mersha observes that their target isn't coming. Rizel agrees, concluding that this god is not one to be easily baited. She quickly changes her tune, deciding it doesn't matter since their quarry will have to come out eventually. With a determined grin, she exclaims that they should simply use the device right away. Her eagerness was met with a different proposal. Rizel looked away from her, stating that the experiment with the combination device would proceed, but with himself and the combined hero. Hearing this, Mersha's expression fell into one of quiet confusion. She questioned why the experiment wouldn't be with her. She pressed the point, suggesting it would be better to use the device on her instead. In response, Rizel explained the device's true function. It absorbs the magic power from one individual and transfers it to another, increasing their maximum capacity. He looked at her pointedly, asking if she truly didn't realize the implication of his explanation. Mersha could only stare back, still perplexed. Seeing her continued confusion, he stated plainly that in terms of raw maximum capacity, she was far superior to him. The realization finally struck Mersha, who asked in disbelief if she was truly stronger. He confirmed it with a smile, revealing his true desire. He wanted someone who could fight alongside him, someone with the potential to become even stronger, strong enough to surpass him. The thought of surpassing Rizel left Mersha momentarily stunned. As she began to understand, he clarified his motive was not simply to test the device, but to empower her so she wouldn't get in his way. He then leaned closer, revealing one final secret. The device holds a connection between the summoning goddess and the magical mind serpent. Rizel explains the function of the artifact to a stunned Mersha, revealing it's connected to the goddess Risha and allows for mental manipulation. Citing his superior skill in that area, he confidently suggests he should be the one to wield its power. She grimaces, clearly stressed by the proposition. After a moment of strained thought, Mersha concedes that she can't object to his logic, admitting he seems determined to try it regardless. Still, she voices her concern, asking if the procedure is truly safe. Rizel simply smirks, retorting that they will never know what might happen unless they actually use it. His expression shifts to one of manic glee as he declares the commencement of their experiment. He muses aloud that his sister, Cecil, would be overjoyed by such an event before announcing it is time to begin. He activates the device. His gaze locks onto the image of his target, an elderly, regal man lying in a deep trance. A brilliant light erupts around Rizel as he grunts, channeling the immense power. The resulting flash is so intense that Mersha is forced to shield her eyes. Rizel, however, remains calm, closing his eyes to assess the connection. He confirms to himself that the activation was successful and, crucially, that his own personality remains in control. Mersha anxiously asks for a status report. He opens his hands, which now glow with an overflow of mana, and explains that while the power is immense, he is able to suppress it. With a confident smile, he declares the experiment a success. Her jaw drops in utter disbelief. Pointing at him with both hands clenched in a fist, she shouts, stunned that he actually managed to pull it off. Their moment is interrupted by the arrival of an armored figure. Mersha turns, wondering if it is the enemy troops' captain. Rizel casually confirms her suspicion, but the captain himself looks on with a grim expression, muttering that this is not what he expected. His grim look twists into one of pure horror as he recognizes the artifact in Rizel's possession. He demands to know why that item is here. Rizel calmly informs the foolish human that they stole it, prompting the captain to cry out in disbelief, insisting it should have been secured in the deepest parts of the palace. He stands his ground as a disembodied voice addresses him directly. A scroll, glowing with faint magic, materializes in the air before him. The voice instructs him to take this message to his king. The voice belongs to the goddess Risha, who, from a remote location, delivers her ultimatum. It is, she declares, a final warning for the humans to surrender. Upon receiving the scroll, the captain's composure shatters. A wave of pure terror washes over him as he realizes the consequence of this task. He knows that if he presents this to the king, he will be tortured and killed for his failure. Seeing his fear, Rizel speaks up, casually threatening to send the captain's head to the kingdom as a bonus if he's too afraid of his king. The captain flinches, exclaiming that he understands. Mersha then interjects with an offer, promising that they will help him before he can be executed, just as they did for the summoned heroes. She pleads for him to come with them, causing the terrified captain to turn and flee. He shouts a frantic order to his bewildered soldiers. Retreat. Don't think, don't ask. As the captain and his men withdraw, Mersha observes that there seems to be no problem. Rizel wonders aloud if the king will actually receive the message. The fleeing captain, meanwhile, makes a silent, desperate vow. If this is a trick, he will hold a grudge against them even in death. Facing the vast enemy army arrayed before them, Mersha suggests using a teleportation spell to send them away. Rizel, however, rejects the idea, insisting that they need all the time they can get. With a resigned sigh, Mersha concedes, acknowledging she has no other choice. He explains his reasoning, stating his desire to test some new tactics with his newly expanded mana pool. Mersha listens intently, her expression thoughtful as she processes his plan. She pouts, complaining that it isn't fair for him to get all the new abilities, especially since she was the one who defeated the combined hero. Rizel playfully observes that she seems to be in a bad mood. He leans closer, a confident glint in his eye, and tells her not to worry. He reveals that he is preparing an ultimate trump card specifically for her. Her annoyance instantly vanishes, replaced by wide-eyed shock and intrigue. With the matter settled, he declares it's time to head back to the castle, anticipating that Cecil and the others are preparing a feast. As they walk through the paved courtyard, his attention is suddenly caught by something ahead. A massive crowd of demons has gathered to welcome them. Mersha stands at the center of the assembly, flanked by Risha and other high-ranking members of her court, all awaiting their victorious return. Mersha's face lights up with unrestrained joy. She throws her head back and laughs heartily, basking in the warm reception. Beside her, Rizel watches with a fond, gentle smile. The celebration erupts as Mersha is swept into a tight, emotional hug by her sister, Cecil. Around them, Serena, Risha, and the other demons cheer and laugh. In the crowd, a young demon boy looks on, utterly bewildered by the scene. A demon chef, beaming with pride, presents an enormous platter bearing a massive roast. Mersha and Cecil stare at the feast with wide, hungry eyes as Rizel looks on, a content expression on his face. He watches the lively celebration from a slight distance. Later that night, the festivities have ended. Tucked into a large bed, Mersha quietly calls out to her sister, Cecil, who lies beside her. She listened as her sister, Cecil, spoke with a lingering sense of disbelief. Cecil affirmed that Mersha had indeed defeated the combined hero, her voice a mixture of awe and shock. Her gaze then felt her own hand, resting on the bedsheets. She marveled aloud that it was with that very hand she had accomplished such a feat. She confessed that, in truth, the experience had been terrifying. A tremor still ran through her, a lingering echo of the fear she had felt as she fought. In response, Mersha gently took her sister's trembling hand. She reassured Cecil, telling her that with that hand, the proud hand of a demon lord, she had protected their people and their country. It was a single, yet extremely important, step forward. Looking into her sister's eyes, Mersha made a vow. Regardless of how close or far Rizel might be, they would protect this place together, with Cecil's strength as well. Unbeknownst to them, just outside the chamber door, Rizel leaned against the wall, having overheard their heartfelt pledge. He quietly affirmed their resolution to himself, vowing that they would indeed protect this country and this world together. At the base of a grand staircase within the demon lord's castle, a crowd of soldiers watches with apprehension. A figure with a single horn, Cecil, kneels at the bottom, while Demon Lord Mersha prepares to address them from the top. Her voice rings out, demanding silence. Mersha announces that although the threat of the combined hero has passed, they must remain vigilant. She declares her plan to travel to another world to train alongside Rizel, the hero from beyond the horizon. Cecil remains with her head bowed, sensing the unease spreading through the ranks. The soldiers murmur among themselves, their expressions filled with concern over their lord's impending departure. At Mersha's command, Cecil rises. The demon lord then reassures her subjects, telling them not to worry, for she has left all her wisdom in the hands of someone else. She proudly announces that all authority will be transferred to her sister, Cecil, during her absence. Mersha candidly admits, to Cecil's visible annoyance, that while her sister is still in training, her political skills are far superior. She then challenges the crowd for any objections. With the matter settled, Mersha prompts her sister to greet the assembly. Cecil steps forward and addresses them directly, stating that she is not as naive as her sister and expects them all to work relentlessly toward their goals in the Demon Lord's absence. Her eyes snap open, her expression hardening into an intimidating glare as she punctuates her command with a sharp, "Got it." The sudden intensity catches Mersha by surprise, and she nervously suggests her sister act with a bit more moderation. The soldiers, however, are completely cowed, stammering their hasty agreement in unison. A few days later, the scene shifts dramatically. Mersha stands on the surface of a vast ocean, looking windswept and annoyed. She asks Rizel why they are in the middle of the ocean, and he replies that it is to learn self-strengthening spells. She questions the location for such training. He simply confirms it is the right place and advises her to step back a little. He began to channel his power, a brilliant ring of light materializing around his feet. Mersha watched with a focused expression, thinking to herself that for once, Rizel was taking a considerable amount of time to cast a spell. The light suddenly erupted in a blinding flash. Mersha's eyes widened in disbelief, her jaw slack as she stammered, "Wah, Dr. Thrall." As the light subsided, it revealed a colossal, powerfully built dragon standing in Rizel's place. Mersha recoiled in shock, shouting in alarm, "A dragon!" The creature's draconic head turned towards her, its voice surprisingly calm as it spoke. "Glad you asked." Her initial terror giving way to curiosity, Mersha questioned if having such a massive body would make it harder to cast spells. Her own questions sparked a sudden, shocking realization. She understood now. This transformation was what he meant by a self-strengthening spell. As this thought crossed her mind, the dragon began to gather a formidable amount of energy, forcing Mersha to grunt and brace herself against the overwhelming pressure. The demon lord Mersha observes Rizel, questioning if he has reverted to his human form. He calmly invites her to examine his body's structure more closely, a suggestion that leaves her momentarily perplexed. Her confusion gives way to understanding as she senses the lingering attributes of a dragon in the magic particles surrounding him. She deduces that he used a humanization technique, asking with astonishment if he managed to transform into both a human and a dragon simultaneously. He presses for more information, asking about the pros and cons of such a dual state. With a smug grin, she declares his assessment correct and claims there are no downsides, an answer that clearly irritates him. She then provides a more detailed explanation. A dragon possesses unique, powerful spells, but is hindered by its large, slow frame. Conversely, a human lacks the capacity to control a dragon's immense mana. The realization dawns on her. A human capable of wielding a dragon's superior spells would be the ultimate combination. He confirms her assessment, adding that this form grants him a stronger body alongside the dragon's unique spells. Mersha excitedly clarifies that by transforming into a human without deactivating the dragon form, all weaknesses are nullified. This hybrid state combines human flexibility and quick-wittedness with a dragon's toughness and resilience, achieving a state of pure self-strengthening. The concept solidifies in her mind as a form of self-strengthening. She muses that to become a dragon, one must first defeat one, a strategic consideration she had never entertained before. This realization, however, leads to self-doubt. With a wavering voice, she admits she is unsure if she could ever master such a high-level technique. Her negativity provokes a sharp reaction from Rizel, who grabs her and tells her to stop saying such things. He vehemently rejects her uncertainty, declaring that her dragon form is determined by her vast mana pool, making her the ideal candidate for the technique. He reveals that he himself was only able to use this ultimate spell after merging with a combined hero, emphasizing just how suited she is for it. His outburst softens as he internally reflects that her chronic low self-esteem must be a result of years of abuse. Outwardly, he tells her this is a bad habit, but one that is also tied to her thought processes. He then accepts his role as her mentor, vowing to help her build confidence. Touched, she apologizes and, with a hopeful smile, agrees to rely on him. Her positive response pleases him. He declares that her spirit is exactly what's needed, and that the first step on her path will be to learn the art of self-strengthening. He presents an ornate bracelet to Mersha, instructing her to wear it. As she admires its beauty, she asks what it is. He explains that it will lessen the burden of her training and act as a minor spell stabilizer. He then gives her a final, challenging instruction to transform into both dragon and human while wearing the bracelet. With renewed determination, she shouts that she will do her best. Her training begins, continuing through the night under the full moon. After some time has passed, Rizel sits alone, examining a glowing interface. His concentration is broken when he hears Mersha's voice echoing from down the hall, calling his name with excitement. She rushes in, beaming with pride, and triumphantly announces that she has finally mastered the dragon-human transformation technique. Eagerly, she asks if he wants to see her new form. Rizel, taken aback for a moment, looks at her with genuine amazement. Mersha turns to Rizel, who is currently in the form of a small dragon, and announces she has something to ask. The sight prompts a memory for Rizel, a time when he was unable to revert from his draconic state. She then questions the true strength of the so-called combined hero, admitting she found him rather underwhelming. Puffing her cheeks, she tells Rizel that if he wants to know the truth, he should simply investigate it for himself. Taking her suggestion to heart, he returns to his human form. He sits calmly beneath the night sky, gazing at the brilliant full moon, and poses a curious question about it. Her composure shatters at his words. Stunned, she stammers in disbelief, questioning his focus on the moon and exclaiming that it's impossible for someone to be living there. He calmly asks if she is certain the matter isn't worth investigating. Regaining her poise, Mersha nonchalantly gives him permission to proceed, conceding that it would be a significant discovery if he were right. Following his decision, a small, insect-like drone activates with a soft chime. It takes flight, its mechanical wings buzzing as it ascends rapidly toward the moon in the night sky. The drone reaches its destination, hovering over the lunar surface. Its sensors reveal a startling sight, a tall, slender white tower standing alone, encased within a shimmering, transparent dome. Meanwhile, in a windswept clearing on the planet's surface, the demon warrior Serena stands alone. Her gaze is fixed on a large tree in the distance, her posture still and contemplative. The wind whips through the clearing, rustling her long ponytail as she remains motionless, lost in thought. Her eyes are closed, her expression a mask of solemn contemplation, suggesting a deep and troubling memory has surfaced. A flicker of understanding crosses Rizel's eye, his slitted pupil constricting slightly. On the balcony, Mersha leans forward expectantly over her teacup, asking for his report. He confirms her fears with a confident smirk. There is no doubt in his mind. His connection to the drone was deliberately severed by someone. His gaze drifts up toward the full moon, a wide, excited grin spreading across his face. He marvels aloud at the revelation that someone truly powerful exists in this world. His casual excitement prompts a violent reaction from Mersha. She slams her hands on the table, her eyes wide with disbelief as she questions if something is really up there. She gestures wildly, protesting that in her several hundred years of life, she has never heard of such a thing. Unfazed by her outburst, he simply states that he is certain. Her shock gives way to a flushed, fiery determination. Pointing forward with newfound resolve, she declares that they must go. He readily agrees, his own smile unwavering. As they resolve to act, another figure stands with them, his horned profile outlined against the sky. Mersha's voice rings out, defining their shared objective. Their goal is the strongest being on the moon. Rizel and Mersha arrive at a solitary tower on the moon's surface, floating in the starry void. He confirms their location, while she expresses astonishment that people truly live in such a place. They land before a strange, shimmering barrier at the tower's base. Rizel voices the immediate challenge, finding a way to get inside. As if in response to his words, an opening materializes in the barrier. Mersha, a bead of sweat on her cheek, observes that the door opened on its own, questioning if they are being welcomed. Her apprehension grows, and she wonders aloud if their presence has been detected, and if this is a trap. Rizel, however, remains calm, assuring her that he senses no hostility. He states their purpose plainly, explaining they cannot find the cub without entering the mother's nest. With a decisive tone, he says they must go inside, and Mersha hesitantly agrees. Just as they are about to proceed, Rizel comes to an abrupt halt. Confused, Mersha looks up at him from behind and asks why he has suddenly stopped. He doesn't answer, but her own senses provide the reason. She detects the impossible, the presence of air and the distinct smell of grass. Her confusion erupts into utter shock as she looks up to see a bright blue sky, fluffy clouds, and a distant tree. She cries out in disbelief. The view expands, revealing a vast, windswept field of green grass stretching out before them, an entire landscape contained within the lunar structure. Rizel identifies the powerful magic at work, spatial creation. Mersha is stunned, remarking on the immense amount of mana such a spell would require, and marveling that such a powerful individual exists. He and Mersha stood in the vast, grassy expanse when a voice suddenly called out, demanding to know their business. Rizel's gaze sharpened as he turned toward the unseen speaker. He realized it wasn't a person, but something else entirely. A young man with prominent horns appeared, remarking that it wasn't worth the trouble to go outside. Mersha pointed out that he was the one who had let them in. Rizel's eyes narrowed. He identified the being as a humanoid dragon, confirming his suspicion that this was no ordinary individual. The horned man sighed, placing his hands behind his head with a look of mild annoyance. He decided to rephrase his query, asking them directly one more time what they were there for. In response, Mersha stepped forward, a wide, predatory grin spreading across her face. She declared that she was looking for someone strong and issued a direct challenge. He should have a bout with her. Her sheer audacity left the horned man momentarily speechless. His shock quickly melted into laughter. He complimented her straightforward nature, admitting he liked that she declared her intent rather than launching a surprise attack. A flustered Mersha pressed him for an answer, asking if he accepted. As this exchange unfolded, Rizel's gloved hand tightened into a fist. He then stepped forward, positioning himself before Mersha. With a calm but firm tone, he addressed both of them, asking who would be going first. Behind him, Mersha looked on, a thought crossing her mind. This man, Rizel, was truly strong. Facing the horned warrior, Rizel and Mersha stand ready. Rizel announces their decision. They will accept his offer and attack together. The Dragonoid's eyes widen with manic glee, and he declares that for the first time in 1,000 years, he will finally have some fun. He then launches himself into the air, hovering in the distance. Mersha states that she won't be holding back. With a grin, the Dragonoid asks if they should begin, while Rizel observes that his opponent seems to be enjoying himself. In response, Mersha unleashes a blinding flash of magical energy. The blast erupts around the Dragonoid, sending him hurtling backward through the air as he braces against the concussive force. The warrior instantly closes the distance, appearing directly before Mersha with his fist drawn back. Dismissing her attack as too slow, he throws a powerful punch that connects with a deafening boom, but the blow is intercepted. Rizel now stands between them, his hand stopping the punch. The Dragonoid expresses his approval, noting that Rizel has tagged in and that it was a good move. His eyes then fall upon his own fist, now being enveloped by a dark, swirling energy emanating from Rizel's hand. He realizes this is the real deal as the dark energy forms into thick tendrils, binding his arms. He defiantly shouts, questioning if they truly believe such a technique can hold him, just as a strange pattern flares in Rizel's eye. The Dragonoid strains against his bonds, cursing for being caught off guard from behind. The dense magical power paralyzes him completely. He grunts with effort, realizing he is trapped and won't be able to move in time. With his opponent immobilized, Rizel gathers a massive sphere of crackling energy in his palm, preparing to unleash a decisive blow. He thrusts his hand forward, launching the concentrated blast of power directly at the ensnared Dragonoid. The attack dissipates. Rizel now stands before the Dragonoid, his hand firmly gripping his opponent's fist. The Dragonoid realizes what has happened. Rizel explains with a smirk that he knew, and that he has borrowed a special technique, the Dragon Man technique, to strengthen the warrior's body. He watched with a knowing smirk as the Dragonoid stared in disbelief at his own fist, now encased in a rapidly growing crystalline shell. The Dragonoid, realizing the cunning plan to stop his movement, gritted his teeth in frustration, exclaiming that this was happening yet again. Rizel, meanwhile, seemed almost exasperated by his opponent's predictable reaction. As the Dragonoid remained fixated on his trapped hand, Mersha seized the opening. She launched herself into a powerful high kick aimed directly at his head, declaring that a dragon's primary weakness is its short temper. The Dragonoid looked up just in time to see the attack descending upon him, his expression one of pure shock. The Dragonoid scoffs, believing no woman's kick could ever be so powerful. His confidence is shattered as a devastating blow connects with his face, sending him reeling backwards with a spray of blood. Following the initial strike, Rizel delivers the finisher, a precise hand thrust that pierces the Dragonoid's chest. As blood erupts from the fatal wound, Rizel stands composed, with Mersha observing from a distance. The force of the final blow seems to fracture the very air. The Dragonoid, collapsing, finally comprehends his defeat at the hands of an otherworlder. Both Rizel and a surprised Mersha watch him fall. Lying defeated on the ground, he speaks to Rizel, asking if he's figured it out yet, noting that his clothes are strange. Rizel's attention is then drawn to Mersha, who looks at him intently and declares her wish to impart her skills onto him. He questions her offer, asking if she truly means to give her skills to him. From the ground, the dying Dragonoid lets out a weak laugh, remarking that the Demon King doesn't seem very talented anyway. His amusement fades as he turns his gaze back to Rizel. With his last breaths, he asks if Rizel will listen to an old dragon's final request. He kneels beside the fallen warrior, taking his outstretched hand without hesitation and agreeing to the request. As their hands connect, a faint light transfers from the Dragonoid to Rizel. The dying warrior expresses his gratitude for being able to fight someone so strong. As Rizel confirms he has received the gift, his life fades away, the Dragonoid's final words trailing off as he attempts to explain what he has just passed on. His final thought echoed in the silence. It had been really fun. With that, the life faded from his eyes. Mersha quietly confirmed his passing, stating that he was gone. Rizel could only agree. He looked away from the body, remarking that the Dragonoid had devoted his entire life to self-improvement. Mersha, her expression somber, confessed that she still found it hard to believe that people of such strength even existed in the world. She then turned to face Rizel directly, her expression hardening with resolve. She announced that she had something important to say and that she had better say it now. He turned to her, his attention captured. "What is it?" he asked. She demanded to know why he had finished the Dragonoid off, arguing that the fight was already over and there was no need to kill him. She pointed out that he was the only other truly strong person in this world, and that it would have been smarter to keep him by their side. Before Rizel could respond, she suddenly held up her hands, shouting for him to wait, realizing that the technique he inherited from the dragon would explain everything. He began to chuckle softly, which only confused her further. She asked what technique he had inherited. With a slight, knowing smirk, Rizel revealed its name: Resurrection of the Dead. The word struck Mersha, leaving her utterly speechless. The implication of the technique's name became clear. The spirit of the Dragonoid appeared, laughing heartily, admitting that Rizel had gotten him. Enraged by the trick, Mersha screamed at the departed warrior, vowing to kill him all over again. Standing before a lone tree, Mersha asks Rizel if he intends to attempt the resurrection immediately. With a wry smile, Rizel confirms, acknowledging it sounds like something a mad scientist would say. He admits it's his first time resurrecting someone, but expresses a keen interest in the process before announcing he will begin. He extends his hand, for which a brilliant light erupts. The potent energy flows across the grass toward the still, lifeless body of the Dragonoid. The light envelopes the Dragonoid's form, mending the fatal wound in his chest and healing the damage to his face. As the light fades, his eyes flutter open, life returning to them. He sits up and stretches with a groan, fully restored. Rizel remarks that the resurrection was a success. The Dragonoid turns to him, stating he knew Rizel would be the one to bring him back. This sparks an idea in Mersha, who excitedly asks if they can use this amazing power to revive the fallen citizens. Rizel, however, bluntly tells her that it is impossible, leaving her stunned. She demands to know why. The Dragonoid calmly suggests they discuss it over tea. Before they can move, Mersha has a shocking realization, exclaiming that the technique must only be able to resurrect those the user has personally killed. As they sit for tea, the Dragonoid explains that the technique's success rate is increased by this very restriction. He reasons that a power without such limits would throw the world into chaos. Mersha quietly concedes that his point is valid. Rizel elaborates, confirming this is why he couldn't resurrect the dragon Mersha had defeated. He offers to teach her the technique if she wishes to fight it again, though his tone suggests a catch. Mersha internally dismisses the idea, thinking the dragon wasn't very strong and would not even serve as a decent training session. The Dragonoid, however, changes the subject with a knowing smile. He mentions that he heard Rizel not only defeated the synthetic hero, but also conducted a synthesis experiment. His words catch Rizel completely off guard. Visibly surprised, he demands to know how the Dragonoid could possibly have that information. He quickly tries to dismiss it, asking what it matters. The Dragonoid simply winks, casually stating that even he knows that much. He continued his explanation, suggesting that if the opponent was the synthetic hero Rizel had killed in the past, he might be able to resurrect them with his own hands. He admitted, however, that he had never tried it and couldn't guarantee its success. Rizel absorbed this information, his expression thoughtful as he quietly acknowledged that he understood. He then abruptly announced they were returning to the Demon King's castle, a good idea having just occurred to him. Mayor Shah, taken aback, questioned the sudden change of plans, protesting that she was in the middle of an explanation. Rizel simply stated that he had understood the gist of it. Mayor Shah grumbled that he had dodged the subject, but the Dragonoid calmly told her she was welcome to visit any time. Seizing the moment, Rizel turned to the Dragonoid and asked if he intended to accompany them. The Dragonoid cheerfully declared that he had no such intention and was going to enjoy his retirement. Rizel smiled, replying that he had expected as much. With their business concluded, Rizel bid him farewell, saying they would meet again. The Dragonoid simply agreed, their hands clasped in a firm shake, a gesture of mutual respect. Rizel sealed the parting by calling him his friend. Mayor Shah waved an energetic goodbye as she and Rizel turned to leave. The Dragonoid watched them go for a moment before turning his attention to his own immediate future. He walked to a lone tree atop a grassy hill, lay down in its shade, and decided to take a nap. Later, under the light of the moon, Mayor Shah sat in a room in the castle with her sister, Sissel. Mayor Shah complained aloud about Rizel, questioning why he would summon even Sissel there. Her sister, however, seemed unbothered, expressing that she was looking forward to whatever was about to happen. She and her sister, Sissel, stare in stunned silence as Rizel appears in the doorway. He offers a calm apology for keeping them waiting. Rizel's attention, however, is not on the sisters. He stands before an elderly demon man, whose eyes well with tears as he recognizes his granddaughters. The man whispers the word, "Grandfather." The man's voice, filled with emotion, calls out to both Mayor Shah and Sissel. Overwhelmed, Mayor Shah can only stammer that this cannot be happening. Her mind flashes back to a memory from long ago. She recalls her grandfather's gentle touch and his voice, instructing her and Sissel to listen closely. In that memory, he looked down at them both, his young granddaughters, and imparted a crucial piece of wisdom. One of them would surely become the Demon King, and they must always help each other. He continued his counsel, urging them to work together to improve their country. He reminded them that when times are painful, they should lean on the many people they can rely on. The memory fades, and in the present, the sisters collapse into their grandfather's embrace, tears streaming down their faces. He holds them tightly, remarking on how much they have grown and admitting how much he missed them. Pulling back slightly, Mayor Shah, still crying, asks how this is possible, reminding him that he was defeated by the synthetic hero. Her grandfather simply turns his gaze toward Rizel and explains that it was he who resurrected him. Rizel acknowledges this with a calm expression, stating that it is now time to explain the full course of events to the former Demon King. As the explanation begins, the former king is struck with disbelief, exclaiming in shock when he learns that Mayor Shah was the one who defeated the synthetic hero. Beside him, Mayor Shah beams with pride. He processed the information, his hand to his chin, and asked if absorbing the synthetic hero meant Rizel was now treated as the same person. Rizel, seated beside Mayor Shah, confirmed that this was precisely how he was able to perform the resurrection. He clarified, however, that it was only the memories concerning the resurrection that were passed on to him. It seemed the memory of defeating the Demon King had been transferred through mana. Rizel admitted he had been half-doubting his ability to resurrect the former king, but felt relieved when the man's face floated into his mind. The grandfather acknowledged this with understanding, before Rizel posed a new question. Was it possible to perform this synthesis on his granddaughters? At the suggestion, both Mayor Shah and Sissel erupted in protest. Mayor Shah declared it was unfair if only Lord Rizel could do it, while Sissel stammered that there was surely no harm in trying. Their argument intensified as they pointed accusingly at a startled Rizel. Sissel argued that since the synthesis was proven safe, it would be a good thing for them to become stronger. Mayor Shah agreed emphatically, adding that while Rizel might not be skilled at mental manipulation, this was an entirely separate issue. He calmly countered their excitement, reminding them that the synthetic hero was a mortal enemy to all demons. He asked if they truly had no resistance to the idea of making such an enemy part of their very being. Sissel's serious expression vanished, replaced by a wide grin. She declared that compared to the prospect of becoming stronger, such a concern was trivial. Mayor Shah voiced her agreement as their grandfather chuckled, apologizing to Rizel for his granddaughter's zealous nature. Convinced by their resolve, Rizel relented and agreed to begin the synthesis. The sisters cheered in triumph. Moments later, Sissel clenched her fists, feeling an incredible power overflowing from within her. After the procedure, the former Demon King approached Rizel with a serious question. He asked why, truly, he had been brought back to life. Rizel's reply was direct. He wanted him to assist Sissel. He elaborated on his reasoning, explaining that although Sissel has her own vassals, he felt it would be a pity to leave her to manage everything all alone. His proposal having been made, He watches as the former Demon King observes his granddaughters. Mersha teases Sissel, boasting that she now feels powerful enough to cast ultimate magic with ease, which causes a flustered Sissel to tell her not to try it there. The old king chuckles warmly, his eyes crinkling with a gentle smile. He accepts the new role, affirming that watching over his granddaughter is the greatest happiness a grandfather can have. Seeing the matter settled, Rizel offers a simple, sincere word of gratitude. He then turns to the former king, placing a hand on his back in a gesture of camaraderie. He expresses that he looks forward to their collaboration. In that moment, a sharp, unseen disturbance cuts through the air, causing both him and the old king to turn their heads abruptly, their expressions hardening with focus. Elsewhere, Mersha's eyes glint with newfound power, her hands crackling with dark energy. With Sissel at her side, she declares that their preparations are finally complete, and she can now challenge the humans for negotiations without any reservations. The scene shifts to a human city, where a furious shout of "damn it" erupts from a stately building, echoing through the streets. Inside, a human king, his face twisted in rage, seethes with frustration. He questions aloud why he is unable to win. His attendant, Regias, watches in fear, noticing the king's hand is bleeding from his outburst. The king whirls on him, roaring for him to shut up, causing the young man to recoil with a terrified squeak. As the shout fades, a brilliant, blinding light suddenly erupts from an open doorway, flooding the entire room. The light emanates from a lone figure standing in the threshold. Paralyzed by fear, Regias can only stammer in disbelief, questioning what this overwhelming presence could possibly be. The mysterious figure who had appeared before the human king is revealed to be part of a trio. A woman with large, dark horns and a confident smile steps forward, flanked by the stern-faced Mersha and a horned man with dark hair. She addresses the monarch directly, stating that it is a pleasure to meet the king of humans for the first time. She then declares her identity with an air of absolute authority, announcing herself as Sissel, the new demon king. With her position established, she proposes they immediately begin peace negotiations. The declaration strikes the human king like a physical blow. He can only stare back, wide-eyed and trembling, his face a mask of pure shock and terror as he stammers incoherently. Demon Lord Mersha offers a warm smile, thanking their host for the welcome. Beside her, her sister Cecil maintains a severe, unimpressed expression. They are in a formal meeting room, having made a sudden visit. The demon delegation, Mersha, Cecil, and a tall, horned figure, sits opposite two human representatives, a flustered noble with a goatee and his nervous, bull-haired aide, Regias. The noble, sweating slightly, clenches his fist on the table, muttering to himself that he had no choice in the matter. His aide looks on, his face etched with worry. The horned figure, Rizel in disguise, observes the noble coolly. He realizes the man has no idea he is face-to-face with the very summoned hero he exiled. The noble, meanwhile, feels trapped, believing he must acquiesce for now, unaware of the true danger he is in. Taking command of the tense atmosphere, Mersha leans forward. She declares that it is time to immediately discuss their demands. She then lays out their primary condition: the complete and total abolition of the unequal treaty that has long existed between the human and demon races. Mersha concludes their demands with a staggering figure: 1 trillion pi in reparations for past grievances. Following this bombshell, Cecil calmly pushes a document across the table, explaining that all the details are recorded within it. The noble recoils, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief as he stammers, "What did you say?" Cecil feigns surprise at his outburst, covering her mouth and asking him to stop telling such blatant lies. The noble slams his hand on the table, roaring in protest that there is no truth to the claim that humans used demons as slaves within their territory. Unfazed by his denial, she simply asks him to show the evidence for his claim. Behind her, Rizel agrees, stating it's very well, as his hand begins to glow with a brilliant light. Cornered and sweating profusely, the noble can only stammer that he is not lying, his face a mask of pure terror. He stammers, utterly cornered as the magical projection displays irrefutable proof: demons, bound and forced into labor under the watch of an armored guard. The voice questioning him demands an explanation for the scene. As he fumbles for a reply, the demon Lord Mersha presses her advantage, asking if he still intends to claim there are no slaves when they know of approximately 100 such facilities. Her sister, Cecil, then quietly tells Rizel he can dismiss the image. His defiance shattered, the noble sweats and weakly concedes. With the man's submission secured, Rizel's gloved hand presents a document, instructing him to sign. Before the pen can meet the paper, a powerful voice roars, warning him not to be so hasty. A blinding flash of light erupts in the room, forcing everyone to shield their eyes from its brilliance. From within the light emerges a divine figure, whom the noble recognizes with a gasp as the goddess. With a stern expression, she commands the summoned hero to reveal their true identity. Her sudden, powerful appearance does not go unnoticed. Cecil observes the newcomer, acknowledging internally that this is power befitting a goddess. Rizel, however, remains unperturbed. He remarks on the convenience of her arrival, noting that it saves him the trouble of using a synthesis device for mental manipulation. Upon hearing this, the noble's eyes widen in horrified recognition. He confirms the noble's dawning fear, calmly stating that he simply faked his death during the assassination attempt. The noble reels, his mind screaming that he was certain of the kill, while the goddess looks on in shock. Panicked, the noble asks what he can do, and she tells him there's only one thing left. In a final, desperate gambit, the noble slams his hands on the table, begging the summoned hero to become his ally once more. Rizel and Mersha simply stare back, their expressions blank and unimpressed. He presses on with a frantic proposal. If Rizel can persuade the demon lord to cancel the reparations, he will give him half of the entire amount. He asks if it isn't a good deal, his face a mask of desperate hope. He stammers, unable to decide on a course of action. Rizel, however, seems weary of the entire exchange. With a sigh, he dismisses the offer, stating that his ambition is to become the strongest in the world, not a wealthy man. He considers the noble's proposal a poor trade. The king, enraged by the noble's uselessness, declares he will settle the matter himself. But before he can act, the summoning goddess, Risha, interjects. She addresses Rizel directly, offering to grant his wish to return to his original world, provided he meets her conditions. Rizel, unfazed, asks what they are. She lays out her terms with a confident smile. He must kill the two demon sisters with his own hands. She presents it as a simple task. Rizel considers her straightforward condition, finding it so simple that he can think of no other response than an unequivocal no. He then reveals that he has already devised a much safer and more certain method for returning to his world. A complex, glowing magical tool materializes in his hand. He declares his true intention, to absorb Risha and claim her interdimensional teleportation ability for himself. Her composure breaks, and she demands to know what kind of being he truly is. She scoffs at his plan, boasting that she is the creator of that very magic tool and that she naturally included a mechanism to prevent the creator from being absorbed. Rizel calmly counters, informing her that he already modified that mechanism beforehand. The goddess's face contorts in utter disbelief. Her confidence shatters as she realizes the impossible is happening. Her body is being affected by the tool. Rizel explains that modifying such a device is quite easy for someone proficient in making basic tools, implying her own skills are lack. He presses his advantage, condescendingly suggesting that she must have been an amateur when it came to crafting magic tools. The insult, coupled with her powerlessness, leaves her stunned into silence. As the magical energy intensifies around her, Risha's terror peaks. She screams at Rizel, calling him a monster. From her throne in the demon realm, Mersha overhears the cry and quietly wonders if the accusation is meant for her. Beside the throne, Mersha's sister, Cecil, remarks on the irony of such words coming from the summoning goddess's mouth. Mersha agrees, declaring that she will return those words to Risha. Below, the goddess can only cry out in agony. Her pleas to stop the magic tool are desperate and futile. The energy constricts her, rendering her unable to even make a sound. Observing the scene with cold detachment, Mersha raises a finger, casually wondering if they should silence the goddess for a moment. As the demon lords and human king watch, the summoning goddess's form shatters and dissolves into light. The human king gasps in horror, realizing she is fading away completely, her essence being drained by the glowing magical tool. The tool, having served its purpose, crumbles into dust in Rizel's hands. He watches silently as the last remnants of the divine being dissipate, understanding that the artifact collapsed after its creator was no more. He then turns his attention to Mersha, who asks how he is feeling. Rizel confirms that his body feels light and his magic is easier to control, remarking that even a fallen deity is still a god. With the nuisance now gone, he suggests they try again. Standing alongside Mersha and her sister, he presents a document to the terrified human delegation. With a triumphant grin, Mersha formally requests that they sign the treaty. The human king, trembling and sweating profusely, can only manage a choked, affirmative response, completely defeated. Sometime later, the imposing silhouette of the demon king's castle stands against the night sky in a full moon. A cheerful voice echoes out, announcing their return to their grandfather. Inside, the former demon king greets them warmly, asking how their mission went. Mersha and her sister strike a victorious pose, joyfully declaring that the treaty's conclusion was a success. Their grandfather expresses his delight at the wonderful news. He then invites them to sit and recount the details of their venture over some tea. As the story unfolds, the former demon king is stunned. He asks in disbelief if Rizel truly absorbed the goddess and her interdimensional teleportation ability. Rizel confirms it, explaining his reasoning. With that power, he could return periodically, and Mersha could visit her sister and the others. The old demon's shock gives way to a warm, please smile. He acknowledges the truth in Rizel's logic, calling it good news and a rather stylish way of thinking, as his granddaughters look on happily. The former demon king watched as Mersha turned to Rizel with a question. She asked if he intended to send the other summoned individuals back to their original world. Rizel confirmed that was indeed the plan. Eagerly, Mersha declared they must inform the three of them immediately, and Rizel readily agreed. Acting on their decision, they shared the news with the three summoned heroes. The men were overcome with emotion. Leol and Frodo wept openly, thanking Rizel profusely for the chance to finally go home. With a wave, Banza bid them farewell. A gentle smile on his face, Rizel admitted that their joy was making him tear up as well. He then turned to Mersha, suggesting it was time for them to depart as well. She readily agreed. As they prepared to leave, their grandfather approached, his expression warm as he urged them both to be careful. Standing beside him, Cecil took her sister's hand, echoing the sentiment. Mersha squeezed her hand in return, promising she would. With a final, cheerful wave against the moonlit night sky, Mersha announced her departure. She and Rizel then vanished into the darkness, beginning their journey. A barrier of light shatters under the force of a dark, crackling energy. From within the distortion, Rizel emerges, taking in his surroundings. The strange atmosphere feels familiar, stirring old memories within him. He looks out upon a desolate, cratered wasteland dominated by a towering, monolithic structure in the distance. He recoils, wondering what in the world this place is. Beside him, Mersha observes that his hometown is quite savage, remarking that it looks just like hell. She turns to him with an exasperated expression, demanding to know what kind of magic experiment he could have possibly failed to cause such a drastic change to the entire environment. He admits that he messed up an experiment right before the goddess summoned him, identifying the technique as a quantum magic circle. The name leaves Mersha utterly confused. He proceeds to explain the concept as an evolution of magic circles, from a simple level 1 plane to a level 2 solid form, and now the new level 3, the quantum magic circle. He describes it as an excellent technique that packs more information than a 3D magic circle, thereby increasing its efficiency. He reflects that his past self would have failed at this, but with the goddess's power, he is now certain of success. As he raises his hands, intricate rings of light form around him, and the barren ground below begins to shimmer with countless points of magical energy, heralding a great change. As the transformation sweeps across the land, he continues his explanation. By incorporating random numbers into parts of multiple 3D magic circles and superimposing them, it becomes possible to handle high-level magic that was previously impossible. This, he declares, is the essence of the quantum magic circle. Mersha watches in shock as the lava zone instantly becomes a grassy plain. She beams, flashing a sharp-toothed grin, and shouts that while she sees what happened, she doesn't understand it all. Her expression quickly shifts through phases of bewilderment and frustration, ending in an angry, pouting scowl. She concedes that with her current knowledge, she can only grasp that his magic is something far more amazing than a standard 3D magic circle. She wonders aloud if she'll ever be able to wield such a power. Rizel thoughtfully replies that he can't say for sure. He then changes the subject, asking why she keeps mentioning super ultimate life forms. Realizing he hasn't explained, Mersha informs him that there are 9 such beings in total. Each one, she stresses, possesses a unique paranormal ability. His expression hardens with resolve. He declares his ultimate goal, to defeat all 9 of them and complete the collection of their abilities. Only by doing so, he states, can he become the world's strongest being he aims to be. He reveals that he knows the locations of the super ultimate life forms. They are lurking, he explains, in the lowest floors of dungeons hidden within the world's most remote regions, areas that are further protected by natural barriers against teleportation. Risha challenges this, pointing out that until now, no one has ever devised a method to overcome such barriers. She questions if even he can succeed, now that he has obtained the goddess's power. He quietly acknowledges the truth in her words, contemplating the power he now wields. Her gaze softens as she poses a more profound question, asking if he is truly certain that he is the one destined for this path. Later, his attention shifts. He turns to the demon lord, Mersha, and speaks her name, stating that something is worth considering. She looks back at him, her expression questioning. He then makes a startling proposition, asking if she would like to try going to the divine realm. The suggestion catches her completely off guard, her face contorting in disbelief. In an instant, they stand within a vast, empty white void. Mersha, stunned, asks if this is the divine realm. He confirms that it is, clarifying that it is a world created by the goddess. Mersha exclaims that there is nothing there, but he points out that something is visible in the distance. They approach a strange device. Mersha wonders what it is. He examines it, noting it has a mana stone like the synthesizer and a faint trace of the goddess's power. He deduces that the goddess's teleportation ability was externalized into this machine, which is why, as Mersha realizes, it remained intact after the goddess disappeared. Suddenly, the device activates, its screen turning on by itself. Mersha gasps. He immediately surmises that it must have reacted to the goddess's power now residing within him. The screen displays a desolate, rocky landscape. He recognizes it instantly as the place where he first arrived and conducted his experiments. A coordinate map confirms the location, pinpointing that exact spot. His eyes lock onto the display, a look of intense focus crossing his face as he absorbs the coordinates. Beside him, a concerned Mersha asks what he is doing. He observes the device's screen, which displays a dark, foreboding cave entrance. Mersha, startled, demands to know what he just said. Rizel calmly clarifies that the image shows the lowest floor of the dungeon, the habitat of the ultra-ultimate life form. He internally marvels at the power of the goddess's teleportation ability. The device's capacity to display this location proves it can circumvent the natural barriers that typically block such magic. Mersha, processing this, asks if this external device was how the goddess achieved such pinpoint accuracy with her teleportation. He confirms her suspicion, adding that he doesn't know the exact reason for separating the power, but presumes she was simply unable to handle it herself. His attention is then drawn to something else on the device's interface. "What is it?" he murmurs, prompting a curious glance from Mersha. Mersha, with a knowing smirk, teases him about the clumsy goddess and questions whether he could handle such power himself. Rizel considers this, touching his chin thoughtfully, and concludes that he likely could, precisely because the ability has been externalized. "That is exactly it," she confirms, pleased with his conclusion. She then proposes a new idea. If the power could be separated from its user, perhaps it could also be fused with a new one. Realizing the brilliance of her suggestion, she proudly declares that her presence has finally proven useful. Rizel considers her words, contemplating the possibility of absorbing the device's power for himself. A smile spreads across his face. He likes the idea. "Well then, let's give it a try," he declares, reaching for the device. Placing his hands over the glowing orb at its center, he initiates the refusion, causing it to erupt with brilliant light. Streams of energy swirl from the device and into his hands. He lets out a soft exclamation of surprise as the power flows into him. Mersha watches intently, asking for the result. "Let's test it out," he replies, his hands still glowing. The device's screen flickers to life, once again displaying the same dark cave entrance from before. Mersha looks on in amazement as he confirms the test success. He clenches his fist in triumph. Now possessing the ability to teleport anywhere, he turns to Mersha and proposes their next move, to hunt the first ultra-ultimate life form. He materializes with Mersha in a desolate, cavernous space, the ground cracked and unstable beneath their feet. He confirms that he teleported them a safe distance away to bypass any potential traps. Mersha, however, shivers, unnerved by the palpable dread in the air and the trembling of the very ground, questioning if this is truly the creature's lair. Her question is answered almost immediately as a monstrous, shadowy form with two malevolent, glowing eyes coalesces from the darkness before them. Mersha lets out a sharp cry of alarm, but Rizel remains steady, announcing that their quarry has come. The shadow solidifies, revealing a towering, skeletal horror with great, leathery wings. As it looms over them, Rizel confirms its identity, the first ultra-ultimate life form. He studies the creature, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes as he senses something amiss. Beside him, Mersha shakes off her fear, declaring her intent to simply take the creature down. Rizel gives a curt nod of approval, encouraging her to see what it's made of. Taking his words as her cue, Mersha inhales deeply and unleashes a concentrated blast of pure energy. The beam lances through the cavern, striking the skeletal life form directly in its skull. The force of the blast sends the creature reeling, its skeletal form crashing heavily against the cavern floor. Mersha stares in disbelief, shocked that she defeated it in a single blow. Rizel, however, remains wary, warning her that it could be a trap and to stay on guard. They wait in the ensuing silence, observing the still form of their fallen enemy from a distance. The quiet continues, prompting Mersha to wonder aloud if it truly perished so easily. Rizel refutes the idea, certain that something is wrong. His suspicion is confirmed when Mersha cries out, pointing as the creature's limbs begin to convulse and transform. Before their eyes, the creature's solid, skeletal frame dissolves, melting into a churning puddle of thick, white slime. From the bubbling mass, a small, gelatinous sphere rises, a simple, smiling face forming on its surface. Mersha stares in stunned confusion, questioning if this tiny slime is the true life form. Rizel, however, directs her attention elsewhere, stating that this is not their enemy. The small, smiling slime creature suddenly began to contort, its form bubbling and stretching as it attempted to revert to its skeletal shape. Mersha, startled, identified it as some kind of resurrection ability and prepared to strike it down once more. He raised a hand, stopping her. "Wait," he said calmly. "Let me handle this." As his gloved hand began to glow with a soft light, he focused his intent, releasing the creature's shape memory. A brilliant flash erupted from his hand. The creature's form instantly destabilized, collapsing into a simple, inert puddle on the cavern floor. Mersha, now held in his arms, asked if it was dead. He explained that he had only deactivated its shape memory, but his suspicions were growing. He voiced his conclusion. This was not an ultra-ultimate life form, but merely a monster posing as one, squatting in the dungeon's deepest chamber. He elaborated on his theory as Mersha processed the shock of his words. From the moment they faced it, he had felt something was wrong. The creature lacked the distinct, powerful aura he had sensed from the moon dragonets. "Then where has the real one gone?" Mersha asked, her voice filled with concern. In response to her question, he decided on a course of action. "Let me check the dungeon's system data," he declared, believing a hint might be hidden there. He initiated the search, and a complex, glowing interface materialized in the air before them. As he examined the data, His expression tightened. Noticing his sudden change in demeanor, Mersha asked what was wrong. His eyes widened in disbelief as the truth became clear. The very structure of their surroundings, the dungeon's system itself, had been completely rewritten. Within the desolate, rocky landscape, Mersha stares in disbelief, her voice rising in alarm. She questions if the dungeon's data is being rewritten, which would mean the first great ultimate life form they encountered was a fake. Rizel, standing beside her, calmly confirms that such a feat is indeed possible, though he notes that such work can only be performed from the very bottom floor of the dungeon. She immediately asks if this implies someone has already defeated the true first great ultimate life form. He clarifies that he cannot be certain, explaining that one does not necessarily need to defeat the boss to manipulate the data. Holding the small, white slime creature in his hand, he posits that the true goal was likely pathway sabotage, to remove the chance of an encounter and monopolize that power for themselves. He continues his deduction, stating that at the very least, when the goddess summoned him, no one in the world should have been capable of such a feat. Therefore, he concludes this series of events must have transpired during the period he was absent. Listening, Mersha grimaces, muttering about the nasty personality of whoever rewrote the data to keep all the power for themselves. She then pivots to a practical solution, asking if they can simply overwrite the data from their end. Rizel turns to face her, explaining that while overwriting is possible, reverting the boss back into a great ultimate life form is not. Puzzled, she asks why. He explains that without the creature's original genetic information, it cannot be integrated back into the data, and since he has never met the true form, he does not possess it. With Mersha's understanding, Rizel considers their next move. He decides they will head toward the second great ultimate life form first, hoping to find some answers there, sighing that it cannot be helped if they must tackle things out of order. His uncharacteristic dejection prompts a bright smile from Mersha, who remarks that it is rare to see him so depressed. She cheerfully agrees to the new plan, expressing hope that the next target is still intact. Rizel manages a small smile in return, agreeing that he hopes so too, while privately noting her casual reference to him as a man. Their journey leads them away from the desolate plains and toward a small town nestled in a wooded, hilly region, its stone and timber buildings clustered around a central tower. As they approach, Rizel observes that the town's guild is responsible for managing the dungeon where the second great ultimate life form resides. Mersha notes that, unlike the last one, this location is not in a forest, a fact he confirms with a simple affirmation. Upon entering the town proper, they are met with a grim sight. The streets are filled with gaunt, downtrodden people. Mersha is shocked, recalling that the town was full of life on her last visit and questioning what could have happened. Rizel wonders the same, his attention then drawn to a nearby commotion. Two aggressive men are cornering and harassing a young woman. As the woman pleads with them to stop, one of the men grabs her arm. Observing this, Rizel's expression hardens. He notes that there are dangerous types around and steps forward, calling out to the men with a simple hey. One of the thugs turns, startled by the interruption. The thug whirls around, shouting defiance at the interruption. His tirade is cut short by Mersha's cold voice, which warns him to let go of the woman and leave immediately if he values his life. Before he can react, she seizes his wrist with crushing force, twisting it painfully. She repeats her command to get lost, her voice low and menacing. The man cries out in pain as his companion looks on, stunned. Clutching his injured arm, the thug decides to retreat, ordering his partner to leave, but vowing that they will remember this. Rizel watches them go, thinking to himself that while he'd rather avoid trouble, he couldn't ignore that the woman was in distress. The rescued woman bows deeply to Mersha, thanking her profusely for saving her. Taking in their attire, she asks if they happen to be adventurers. Mersha, in turn, asks if the woman is hurt, who confirms she is fine. He then asks for her identity, introducing himself and Mersha in the process. Her face brightens as she introduces herself as a receptionist at the town's guild. Rizel remarks on the convenience of this, explaining that they were just about to head there themselves. Delighted, she offers to lead them. As they follow, Rizel internally credits Mersha's meddling for this fortunate turn of events. Upon arriving at the guild hall, the receptionist thanks them once more. Mersha casually dismisses her gratitude, stating that it was nothing. Inside, her demeanor shifts to one of concern. She explains that what they witnessed was not an isolated incident. Thugs have been appearing all over town for some time now, making their help all the more valuable. Mersha immediately questions if this sudden lawlessness could be connected to the great ultimate life forms. Rizel agrees it's a strong possibility and asks the receptionist to provide them with more details. He approached the counter, Mersha at his side, and addressed the receptionist who had just inquired about their business. He stated clearly that he had a request and wished to speak directly with the guildmaster. The receptionist's expression shifted to one of slight concern as she repeated the title. The guildmaster? He confirmed his request, asking if arranging such a meeting would be difficult. Her demeanor became apologetic as she explained the guild's policy. Meetings with the guildmaster were strictly reserved for adventurers of a rank or higher. The restriction caught him by surprise, prompting him to question the rank requirement. Mersha then interjected, asking if he had his adventurer's card with him. The receptionist's face brightened at the suggestion, adding that they could easily check his rank right there at the counter. His confident expression vanished, replaced by a look of sudden unease. Sensing his hesitation, Mayor Shah called out to him, her tone questioning. Her suspicion grew into irritation. She leaned forward, demanding to know if he had somehow forgotten it. He began to sweat, stammering that he was sure he had it somewhere, but couldn't recall where he'd put it. Mersha's frustration finally erupted. She grabbed him, shouting about what he planned to do now that they were stuck. He could only apologize profusely, admitting with a pained expression that he was not very good at managing small things. As the two stood in a state of mutual panic, the receptionist's voice cut through the tension with an idea. She offered to try searching for his registration using his name instead. Mayor Shah looked up, surprised by the offer, and asked if that was truly permissible. The receptionist brought a finger to her lips with a conspiratorial wink. She explained that while she would normally need a supervisor's permission, she was making an exception as a thank you for being saved, asking them to keep it a secret. She agrees to take his name to search the registry. Relieved, Rizel apologizes for the trouble and provides his name, while Mayor Shah sighs at his side. Her search immediately yields a result. As she reads the screen, Rizel suddenly recalls that he was an S-rank adventurer, a fact confirmed by the prominent listing she has found. Her eyes widen in disbelief. Stunned, she stammers, asking if he could possibly be that Lord Rizel. He looks back, confused by her sudden change in demeanor. Her intense reaction prompts Mayor Shah to ask if he's done something crazy again. Rizel, still perplexed, insists he hasn't done anything in particular as the receptionist trembles with shock. She quickly compares his face to the image on her screen, confirming his identity. She announces that she's found him and that there is no mistake. Having confirmed who he is, she urgently tells them to wait, while she goes to call the guild master immediately. As she hurries away, Rizel wonders if he caused some trouble in the past, but Mayor Shah observes that things seem to be going well. She returns moments later, apologizing for the wait and offering to show them to the reception room right away. Mayor Shah notes that this special treatment means they won't be waiting in the public lobby. Now seated in a private room, Mayor Shah comments that he is clearly a famous person in this world. Rizel considers this, surmising his reputation must stem from his past deeds while training and gathering allies across the land. Before he can say more, the door bursts open. An older man rushes in, bowing deeply and apologizing profusely for the delay. He introduces himself as the chief manager of the guild, as Mayor Shah smirks, thinking Rizel likely performed some incredible feat without even realizing it. The chief manager, now composed, expresses his astonishment at having the great Lord Rizel visit them. After also apologizing for the sudden visit, he formally asks what business has brought them to the guild today. He repeated the request, his face paling with disbelief. Permission to clear the dungeon. The dungeon, you say? Sensing the manager's hesitation, Rizel asked if there was a problem. The man, sweating and clasping his hands, explained that the dungeon was currently occupied by a criminal organization. He elaborated, identifying the group as an organization called the Jailbreakers Paradise, and asking if the name rang a bell. Rizel, his expression thoughtful, confirmed that it did. At this, Mayor Shah interjected, asking Rizel for more details. He explained that the Jailbreakers Paradise was a gang composed entirely of escapees. They specialized in helping high-ranking knights and even S-class adventurers who had committed crimes to escape justice, funding their operations through illicit deals. Mayor Shah realized they must be connected to the thugs in town. He added that their combat abilities were extremely high, far beyond what ordinary adventurers or the town's vigilantes could handle. Mayor Shah grimaced, acknowledging what a troublesome bunch they were. He continued his analysis, speculating that a powerful individual was likely pulling the strings from the shadows, exploiting the dungeon's resources. The guild master confirmed this grimly, explaining that because they couldn't secure those resources, the town's own stockpiles were nearly exhausted, leaving the guild powerless to act. Having heard the full extent of the problem, Rizel's gloved hand tightened into a fist. He stated his understanding, his resolve hardened, his decision made. Mayor Shah seized the opportunity with a sharp grin. She reasoned that if they annihilated the organization, the town's worries would vanish. Declaring it a king's duty to ease the people's burdens, she committed them to the task. In emphatic agreement, Rizel slammed his hand on the table, startling the guild staff as he vowed to dismantle the organization. She then expanded the scope of their mission, casually suggesting they also defeat the second great ultimate life form. The guild master reacted with shock, questioning if they truly intended to challenge such a being. Rizel calmly granted his permission, which transformed the manager's shock into elated relief. He declared it great news, wondering just who these powerful individuals were. With the plan settled, the guild master was suddenly confronted with a new logistical puzzle. Surrounded by a mountain of supplies that had appeared from nowhere, he could only wonder aloud how on earth they had brought so much with them. He stammered, still struggling to process the situation. Rizel explained that the supplies would sustain the townspeople until their return, entrusting the town's care to the guildmaster. He promised a more detailed explanation for another time, while Mayor Shah offered a confident smile. With their task delegated, the pair turned and walked away. As they departed, Rizel's voice carried back, telling the man to look forward to a favorable report. The guildmaster and the receptionist waved them off, wishing them good luck as they disappeared into the darkness. Once they were gone, the guildmaster's expression grew pensive, and he turned to his subordinate. He asked what was on her mind. The receptionist, her curiosity piqued, wondered aloud who Lord Rizel's companion could possibly be. The guildmaster, however, sighed and dismissed the question, stating that it wasn't for commoners like them to know such things. Meanwhile, far from the guild, Rizel and Mersha arrived in a vast, desolate cavern. Mersha surveyed the area, noting it was much larger than the last one. She observed the strange, gouged-out appearance of the walls, as if something immense had carved its way through. Her observation was cut short as a powerful presence washed over them, putting both on high alert. Mersha's expression tightened. The aura was completely different from the previous life form. Rizel agreed, adding that while it was potent, they couldn't yet be certain if it was their true target. Their uncertainty was answered in the next moment. From the shadows emerged a grotesque, emaciated figure, its body contorted into a low crouch. A wide, manic grin stretched across its face as it spoke with a low cackle, inviting them to provide some entertainment. Rizel and Mersha stand before the emaciated, grinning creature. The being issues a challenge, its voice rasping with anticipation, demanding that they provide it with proper entertainment this time. Both Rizel and Mersha meet its gaze with confident smirks, prepared for the battle ahead. In response, Mersha unleashes her power, shouting howl of destruction. A massive sphere of energy materializes before her. The creature, however, appears completely unconcerned, casually flicking a small, dark projectile towards the immense attack. The destructive sphere vanishes without a sound. Mersha stares in disbelief, wondering how her howl of destruction was so completely nullified. Rizel observes the event with a sharp gaze, noting that the attack wasn't just blocked, but entirely erased. He concludes that such power confirms the creature is a transcendent ultimate life form. The creature retaliates, unleashing a swirling vortex of dark, annihilating energy that expands rapidly outwards. This wave of energy slams into Rizel's defensive barrier, which immediately begins to dissolve as if melting. His eyes widen in shock at the sight. He urgently shouts for Mersha to get out of the way, and she cries out in acknowledgement as the ground cracks under the immense pressure. As the immediate danger passes, Mersha observes the molten rock where the barrier once stood. She speculates that the nature of their opponent's ability is to melt things. He corrects her assessment. It isn't quite melting. He identifies the power as neutralization. He elaborates, explaining that their own barrier magic repels attacks or diverts them to subspace. This creature's power, however, is different. It seems to reduce the very existence of whatever it touches into nothingness. The horrifying implication dawns on Mersha. If that wave were to hit them directly, she realizes with dread that they would simply vanish. Panicked, she asks Rizel if he has a countermeasure. He calmly confirms that he does, stating their only option is to utilize the same properties as the creature's attack. As he speaks, he begins to gather a sphere of power in his hand. He then unleashes his own concentrated blast of energy, intending to meet the creature's attack head-on and offset it completely. His face is set with intense focus and determination. He explains to the astonished Mersha that he used a quantum magic circle to generate energy with the same properties as the creature's attack, effectively plating his barrier with it. Mersha can only marvel at the incredible feat. Having explained his defense, he turns to Mersha with a confident smile. He now understands how to defeat the creature and has a plan, but for it to work, he requires her strength. He presents a glowing sphere of energy, instructing her to channel her mana directly into his spell. Hesitantly, Mersha complies, her own power beginning to gather around her hands. As she pours her power into his, their combined mana transforms, swirling from brilliant light into a churning vortex of dark energy. With the spell complete, he announces his plan, to teleport the vortex directly inside the creature's body. The dark energy instantly materializes within the life form's core, causing it to shriek in pain. The internal attack proves devastating. The creature convulses as the dark energy erupts from its core, tearing its body apart with violent, explosive force. In the aftermath of the creature's destruction, a single, swirling orb of dark power remains, hovering in the air. Both Rizel and Mersha watch it intently, a look of apprehension on her face as she wonders what it is. Suddenly, the orb flashes and divides, sending a beam of energy, striking each of them directly in the forehead. She cries out in alarm as she feels the foreign power flowing into her. Rizel, however, simply smiles, explaining that they have successfully obtained the power of the defeated life form. He reminds her that he had told her they would need to cooperate. Understanding dawns on her. He clarifies that had he defeated the creature alone, she would not have been able to acquire its ability. Using cooperation magic was essential to ensure they both receive the power. She feels the dungeon itself reacting to their newly acquired power, noting that the very structure is making popping sounds. Rizel confirms her observation, explaining that this is the power to annihilate anything and everything. A potent ability he must be careful not to use in the wrong place. He elaborates, stating that he initialized the mana. The term is unfamiliar to Mersha, who then asks him to explain the cooperation magic they had used just moments before. He explains that by synthesizing the mana of 2 or more people, it becomes impossible for a living creature to discern whether the initialized mana is its own or an enemy's. By sending this confusing mixture directly into the target's body, it is forced into self-destruction. The logic clicks for Mersha, and she understands. With their primary goal fulfilled, he suggests they move on to their other objective. He believes they might find information about the first transcendent ultimate life form here as well. The prospect of another confrontation fills Mersha with a savage glee. A wide, sharp-toothed grin spreads across her face as she declares she is itching for a fight. Meanwhile, deeper within the dungeon, two men are resting by campfire. One, with spiky light-colored hair and a visor, sits casually, while his companion with longer hair sits opposite him. Their respite is broken by a sudden noise from the surrounding darkness. The spiky-haired man springs to his feet, shouting into the shadows, demanding to know who is there. Rizel and Mersha emerge from the gloom. He calmly identifies the two as members of the Jailbreaker's paradise. The spiky-haired man begins to retort defiantly, but Rizel simply acknowledges his confirmation. From the ground beneath them, a dark vortex, surrounded by chains, begins to manifest. The magical chains erupt and instantly bind the defiant man, wrapping tightly around his arms and torso. He cries out in shock, completely immobilized. He ignores the man's panicked shouts, getting straight to the point. He asks if they were the ones who tampered with the dungeon where the first transcendent ultimate life form resides. As the man struggles, Rizel prepares another attack, making it clear that he will extract the information by any means necessary. He faced his captive, whose eyes widened in realization. The man correctly deduced Rizel's intent was torture magic, speculating that he planned to inflict intense pain by sending signals directly into his sensory nerves. Unsmirk crossed his face as he prepared to demonstrate a proper example of such magic. The captive cried out in disbelief, questioning why his own top-tier spell had failed to activate. In response, dark chains erupted and coiled tightly around the man, who convulsed and shrieked as the agonizing magic coursed through his entire body. His companion watched the brutal display, his face pale with horror as he let out a small whimper of fear. Having made his point with the now incapacitated criminal, Rizel turned his cold gaze to the remaining captive. He asked him one more time if his organization was involved with the dungeon of the first transcendent ultimate life form. The man gritted his teeth, seemingly attempting to trigger something, but a moment of panicked confusion washed over him. He realized with dread that he was not dying as he had intended. Mersha then revealed the reason for his survival. With a confident smirk, she informed him that she had already taken the liberty of deactivating his poison ingestion magic circle. His last resort thwarted, the man collapsed in despair. He frantically explained that they genuinely knew nothing, insisting that as low-level grunts, they would never be privy to the plans of their superiors. He continued to plead, tears streaming down his face, begging them to find and torture the executives on the upper floors if they wanted real information. Observing the man's complete breakdown, Rizel turned to Mersha, convinced of their ignorance. He agreed with the captive's suggestion, deciding their next course of action was to find an executive. He turned his back on the two defeated men, preparing to depart the cavern. Mersha, looking on with surprise, called out to him, asking if he was leaving already. In response, she questioned why he wasn't going to finish them off. Rizel glanced back, dismissing them as not even worth the effort. Mersha conceded that he had a point. As they walked out of the cave's mouth, Mersha mused aloud, wondering if it wouldn't have been better to interrogate someone who looked strong from the very beginning. Their conversation was cut short as they emerged into the light, spotting three figures in the distance. Mersha wondered if one of them was an executive, but her thought was immediately followed by a cry of shock at what she was seeing. The central figure was a tall man whose dark skin was covered in glittering magic stones. Rizel noted the stones connected directly to his body, prompting a confused question from Mersha. He explained that it was a form of human enhancement. By embedding magic stones into the body, one could handle unusually high-output magic. She correctly assumed there must be downsides, since Rizel himself didn't use such a method. He confirmed her fears, stating that the magic becomes extremely prone to running wild. With one wrong move, he warned, there was a risk of causing a massive explosion capable of blowing away an entire continent. The sheer scale of the danger left her stammering, desperately asking if there was a way to handle it. Rizel paused, bringing a gloved hand to his chin in thought. His contemplation ended as a wide, cheerful grin spread across his face. He brightly suggested they just detonate it, leaving Mersha completely speechless and aghast at the proposal. Observing the situation from afar, Rizel turns to Mersha with a bright, unsettling smile, casually suggesting that for now, he should just detonate it. Mersha looks up at him, utterly bewildered by his cheerful proposition. Her bewilderment instantly turns to fury. She retorts that while it would be one thing, if only they were affected, she would never forgive him for involving the nearby residents, warning that the entire area would be blown to smithereens. He quickly tries to calm her, grabbing her shoulder and insisting he has a plan. He explains that there is another fatal downside to the enemy's magic stone connection. He elaborates that the body magic stone connection is a technique that forcibly links one's mana circuit directly to a magic stone, leaving it in an extremely unstable state. Because of this, he continues, the user's mana circuit will be destroyed if their magic runs wild on a large scale. Processing this grim information, Mersha asks with concern if he means the users will no longer be able to use magic at all. He confirms it's even worse than that. The caster becomes utterly useless, unable even to trigger automatic recovery magic. As he speaks, Mersha envisions the catastrophic result, a magic stone shattering within a person's chest, and her expression hardens with the realization of how dangerous his plan is. Despite the horrific nature of the technique, Rizel notes with a smirk that their enemies have many such connections, predicting some flashy fireworks. Mersha recalls their original goal was to obtain the power of annihilation, but Rizel reassures her, telling her not to worry and to carry out the operation as planned. Below them, his spell takes effect. On the ground, the executive grunts as dark energy erupts from the shattered earth, binding his legs. His two subordinates watch in shock, one wondering aloud if it's some kind of torture magic as the executive cries out in pain. He scoffs at the notion of mere torture magic, but his confidence shatters as the dark energy intensifies, tearing at his body. He raises a hand, horrified to find he is completely unable to dispel the curse. His panic escalates as he feels the large magic stone on his necklace begin to crack under the strain. At the same moment, one of his subordinates cries out in terror, pointing as the executive's head begins to violently distort. His subordinates react with sheer terror. The spiky-haired criminal shouts in panic, questioning how dire their situation is, while his hooded companion tries to downplay the danger, insisting that the magic stone has only cracked and hasn't fully run wild yet. The source of their fear becomes clear as the executive glows ominously in the center of the cavern, the unstable energy radiating from him cracking the very walls. From a distance, Rizel and Mersha watch the scene unfold. Mersha notes the intensity of the dispute, but Rizel calmly clarifies the true danger. No one wants to be caught in the rampage of a magic stone connection. He decides it is time for the finishing touch, snapping his fingers. In response, the executive's body erupts in blinding flashes of light, and he lets out an agonized scream as his power spirals completely out of control. As the executive's form distorts violently, his subordinates are frozen in fear. The spiky-haired one realizes they are on a suicide mission, while the other questions if they should even try to run, believing it to be useless against such power. His nerve finally breaks, and the spiky-haired criminal turns to flee, shouting that he doesn't want to be there. His hooded companion cries out, begging not to be abandoned. Rizel watches the fleeing man, considering letting them go for the time being. His contemplation is cut short by Mersha, who urgently points out that the executive is about to explode at any moment. He acts swiftly, weaving dark energy into a swirling barrier that completely encases the volatile executive. Rizel explains to Mersha that he has deployed the power of annihilation, and that they will now simply watch until the event concludes. The detonation occurs, its immense force contained entirely within the dark sphere. The executive's form is visible for a final, agonizing moment before being consumed. As the energy subsides, Mersha cautiously asks if it's over. The barrier vanishes, leaving behind a perfect sphere of absolute nothingness. Rizel declares the experiment with the power of annihilation a success. Mersha is left speechless, amazed that the explosion itself was annihilated. He dismisses the lesson for now, promising to teach her how to set up the barrier later. Mersha, however, points urgently towards the direction the criminals fled, questioning why they aren't giving chase. In response, he reveals his foresight, explaining that he placed tracking magic on them as they ran. A small, glowing sigil materializes above his open palm, prompting an impressed exclamation from Mersha. The sigil expands into a translucent, rectangular map, displaying two distinct points of light moving across its surface. As they observe the magical display, he notes that the targets are traveling through a desert region. Mersha asks if he recognizes the direction they are heading. He confirms their destination, the neighboring kingdom of Galmia. A smirk plays on his lips as he finds this development particularly interesting. She immediately questions if this means the criminal's headquarters is located within the kingdom. Rizel considers this, beginning to voice a deeper suspicion. He suggests the grave possibility that the kingdom itself is the mastermind behind the incident. Mersha reacts with shocked disbelief, shouting out her outrage at the idea of a country supporting a criminal organization. He explains that such a thing is not unheard of, pointing out that a dungeon is synonymous with resources. Given the town's strategic border location, he reasons it wouldn't be strange for another nation to plot to seize control of it. She wonders why they wouldn't simply take it by force, but he counters that they likely wish to avoid depleting their national strength in an open war. She pieces the strategy together. The kingdom would have its accomplices, the jailbreaker's paradise, occupy the dungeon, allowing the kingdom to then intervene and seize both the dungeon and the town. He confirms her assessment, acknowledging that it is not an unthinkable plan. He explained his theory to Mersha, noting that if the dungeon of the third transcendent ultimate life form was indeed in the kingdom of Galmia, it presented a unique opportunity. Within that country, clearing dungeon bosses was strictly prohibited. Mersha, arms crossed, questioned how this restriction could possibly be a sweet deal for them. She immediately suspected his intentions, asking if he planned to blackmail the kingdom. Rizel corrected her with a grin, stating he would merely use the information as a bargaining chip for a dungeon raid, though Mersha wryly noted that was the very definition of blackmail. His expression then sharpened as he observed their magical tracker, announcing that their targets had reached their destination, though he admitted his theory was still just a what-if scenario. As he spoke, one of the fleeing criminals, a hooded figure, reached a dead end in a rocky passage. The figure produced an ornate key, inserting it into a hidden lock in the stone wall, which magically dissolved to reveal a dark corridor beyond. Through their magical viewing screen, Rizel and Mersha watched the entrance appear. Mersha realized with a gasp that this must be their base. Rizel agreed, expressing his hope that they might get a glimpse of the organization's boss or one of its executives. Their view shifted deeper inside, revealing a throne room where a massive figure with a horned, skeletal head sat upon a throne. Rizel remarked on the creature's immense frame, wondering if it was an undead king. He recalled hearing that the boss of Jailbreaker's Paradise was undead, leading Mersha to conclude that this imposing figure must be their target. Just then, a subordinate burst into the throne room, shouting that something terrible had occurred. The skeletal boss irritably demanded that he speak plainly. Watching from afar, Rizel noted how easily the man had blurted out the title boss, confirming their assessment. He and Mersha agreed to continue observing. The hooded subordinate, sweating profusely, delivered his report. The dungeon they had under occupation had ceased all function. The boss's skeletal jaw dropped in disbelief, unable to process the news. He continued, explaining his belief that someone had managed to clear the transcendent ultimate life form within. He added that his own unit had also come under attack, though he was uncertain if the two events were connected. The boss's hand clenched the armrest of his throne with such force that the stone began to crack. He growled, demanding the full details. The terrified subordinate elaborated that through a mysterious torture magic, an entity called Rialdos of the Connection had been forced into a mana rampage. He roared that this was nonsense, arguing that a rampage of that magnitude, with that quantity of magic stones, should have left the entire land devastated. The subordinate could only offer a chilling conclusion. Whoever was responsible must have also possessed the power to perfectly suppress the resulting explosion. He sat upon his throne, the immense undead lord demanding confirmation from his subordinate. "Are you certain?" The hooded figure below could only stammer in reply. "Wait." The subordinate elaborated, sweat beading on their brow, admitting that while they lacked definitive proof, it was the most likely conclusion. The boss then posed a critical question. Was it possible that the person who suppressed the mana rampage and the one who defeated the transcendent ultimate life form were one and the same? At this suggestion, a low chuckle escaped the undead lord's skeletal jaw, quickly erupting into a booming, rattling laugh that filled the cavernous throne room. He brought a gloved hand to his skull, still shaking with mirth. The very idea of someone intentionally triggering a mana rampage only to then completely suppress it was, to him, utterly absurd. The subordinate flinched at the reaction, but another member spoke up, mentioning that a particular person came to mind. The boss's tone turned grim as he recalled a man who once drove their organization to the brink of destruction. That man's name was Rizel. Hearing the name, the hooded subordinate seemed relieved, dismissing the possibility. They couldn't imagine even Rizel pulling off such a stunt, sighing that it couldn't be helped. But their boss was already formulating a new strategy. He roared that from this moment, they were to identify this mysterious individual and gather evidence of their interference. He reminded them that they had occupied the dungeon town in partnership with the Kingdom of Galmia, and if things continued this way, they would face a massive penalty for breach of contract. He continued, laying out the plan. If they could prove the enemy was Rizel, the kingdom would be forced to take the circumstances into account and handle things favorably. However, he issued a stark warning. If their opponent truly was Rizel, a half-hearted force would only be wiped out. Therefore, they would reinforce the dungeon raid unit. Towering over his kneeling subordinates, the undead lord declared he didn't care how many sacrifices it took and commanded them to go. As they acknowledged the order, the entire exchange was being observed from afar. Mersha commented with disgust that to this organization, money was clearly more important than the lives of its members. Rizel scoffed at their plan, thinking them fools. He wondered if they truly believed the kingdom would simply accept the situation and say, "Oh, then it can't be helped," even if they discovered he was the enemy. Mersha found the display unpleasant, though she conceded it was typical for a criminal organization. He and Mersha survey the desolate landscape. Mersha turns to him, remarking that while the current matter requires more investigation, she wonders if it's unrelated to the first transcendent ultimate life form. Her expression shifts to a sharp-toothed, eager grin as she suggests they go hunt for some reinforcements. They immediately burst into a fortified corridor, startling a group of armed individuals. One of the men shouts in alarm, demanding to know who they are, as his female companion stares in wide-eyed shock. The man's shock gives way to recognition as he points and shouts Rizel's name. Mersha smirks, casually introducing herself as just a passing demon king. Their sudden appearance confirms the suspicions of another man observing from nearby. The nobleman slams his fist down in fury, roaring that he knew it was Rizel's doing. His outburst prompts the young woman beside him to ask if he knows the intruder. The nobleman seethes, cursing in frustration. Rizel, however, looks on thoughtfully, admitting to Mersha that he might or might not recognize the furious man. Any uncertainty from Rizel is met with pure rage. The nobleman points accusingly, bellowing about a past grudge and swearing he won't be forgotten. With his fury boiling over, He commands his subordinates to get them.